She was buried in the Black Hills National Cemetery.
The South Dakota Highway Patrol closed several routes through the Black Hills today because of high water and runoff from flooding. The Highway Patrol also warned motorists in the hills to be on the lookout for landslides and falling rocks. Meantime, Governor Janklow said today he expects the impact on agriculture from the 1995 flooding to be huge. Janklow says time is running out for farmers to plant a crop, and the governor is preparing disaster declarations for at least 20 counties in South Dakota.
The National Parent-Teacher Association is celebrating this week as Teacher Appreciation Week. And tonight, Beth Fuller introduces us to a teacher who deserves quite a bit of appreciation, like she's been getting from several generations of students.
She may not look it, but Lowell 5th grade teacher Marilyn Lee is celebrating 36 years of teaching.
One of the nicest memories is when you see one of your students who has grown up and has become successful. And I have had some students in my class whose parents I had earlier, and that's been a really neat experience.
Jim Stansberry is one of those parents. He has fond memories of his days in Miss Lee's classroom.
I think that it's kind of neat that she's still working and that she's teaching my son, you know, maybe the same way she taught me. I've got two little girls at home that are twin girls that had already decided that they wanted Miss Lee too when they got to 5th grade.
But Jim's son Anthony will be the last Stansberry to have Miss Lee. She plans to retire at the end of this year.
Her time's come to retire because she's had my dad, and that was a while ago. And she had a lot of other people's parents. I guess she's probably doing the right thing.
Although it may be the right thing for her, it's hard for her students to see her leave.
Makes just everything fun. Social study, just all the regular subjects. Fun.
When people are messing around and stuff, and she's just really in control, and so she has everything under control, and there's nothing really bad that happens or anything, so it's just going to be bad when she leaves.
But even though this is her last year in the classroom, lessons learned from Miss Lee will be with these students for years to come. In Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
Well, you might think that the child care profession is one that's been around forever, but actually it's 75 years old in America. Child care needs arose with the end of World War I, when America suddenly found itself with hundreds of thousands of widowed mothers who had to go to work to support their children. One group that met the needs of those mothers is celebrating a 75th anniversary. Cammie Melton has the story.
Sweet girl. When mom and dad can't be there, the strong, loving arms of a child care provider comes in a close second. Today, one of the oldest daycare centers in the United States is celebrating 75 years of caring.
We're wonderful 75 years, and we're very happy about our rich history, and we look forward to another successful several decades of service in front of us.
What began as a means of helping widowed mothers go back to work after World War I has now become a necessity, and one that Governor Bill Janklow says has made the country more productive and profitable.
I used to work 2 jobs. I provided daycare in the afternoon, and then I worked a full-time job in the morning. And it was really tough, but I was comfortable with it because I knew we had a good service going.
But Volunteers of America is also using their birthday to honor those that are the best caregivers, mothers and fathers.
The real heroes are parents who are with their children day after day with all those tough decisions that parents only can make.
Over the last 75 years, the major change in the child care field has been the increased demand for this service. But the one constant, Barnett says, is a lack of funding. His birthday wish is that in the future they can celebrate the end of their financial difficulties. In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
In a moment, a look back on the day that came 50 years after the day that the world started to relax.
VE Day plus 50 next on News 5.
And Father Francis Sampson, an Army chaplain who parachuted into Normandy, then into Holland, was wounded, captured, but managed to escape. In their bravery, and that of all their brothers and sisters in arms, America found the will to defeat the forces of fascism. And today, we, the sons and daughters of their sacrifice. Say thank you and well done. I ask all the veterans of World War II now to stand and be recognized.
Monsignor Sampson retired from the service 25 years ago and became a part of the Sioux Falls Catholic Diocese in 1977.
55 years ago today, the beginning of the end of World War II began as Germany surrendered on what became known as VE Day, or Victory in Europe. This afternoon, several men who were in uniform on VE Day gathered at the Sioux Falls Disabled American Veterans Club and recalled where they were at the time.
If I had told me when I got back to the line, I escaped, to the line. That's how I knew found out about it. They'd give up then.
Well, we were over in the Pacific, and we heard that the war was over, but we didn't know anything about it because the Japanese were still going at us.
It was good news, and yeah, it was really a joy.
Why was it good news?
Get this war over with.
We all celebrated. We really celebrated our victory over there in Europe. And I really persist on that. I really like that, when I can get to say, hey, boys, I'm back and going back to America again where we belong.
Well, I was liberated from prison camp in Germany. And in fact, I was liberated on the 29th of April, but we couldn't leave the camp because the facilities weren't there to transport us. But 50 years ago today, we were flown from Landshut, Germany, to Le Havre, France, to Camp Lucky Strike, where we were greeted by the Red Cross and our troops, and a big celebration. We got eggnog to drink and started on rehabilitation.
VE Day, 50 years ago today, marked only the end of the war in Europe. It would be several more months before VJ Day, or Victory over Japan, and the complete end to World War II.
VE celebrations moved from Paris to Berlin today as former foes gathered in one location after the end of the war in Europe. German leaders welcomed members of the traveling summit as they arrived in Berlin. Vice President Al Gore represented the United States at today's commemorative event. German Chancellor Helmut Kohl stood with Allied leaders as the German national anthem was played in honor of all those who gave their lives during the war. Tomorrow, world leaders gather in Moscow for another VE Day ceremony.
DNA school began today in the O.J. Simpson trial in Los Angeles. The jury today played the role of students. For these jurors, this course is not an elective, it's a mandatory class. John Gibson has the story.
It's like Mr. Wizard's smart daughter came to the Simpson trial. She is Dr. Robin Cotton, head of the Cellmark Labs, where DNA samples in this case were tested.
DNA is two strands wound together.
She brought simple diagrams to this class, a cram course that is supposed to prepare the jury for an elementary examination on DNA.
It shows there a series of gels and two power supplies up on.
Eventually, the test results are going to have names, O.J. Simpson's and the two victims. The prosecution is expected to say that Simpson's blood is at the crime scene, the victim's blood is in his car, and in his house. Simpson's side knows this stuff is both incriminating and boring. His lawyers plan to attack the DNA results on the basis of sloppy collection techniques that invalidated the results. The prosecution is anticipating that assault already.
So this process of degradation, can it change my DNA into looking like your DNA?
No.
The defense is also expected to continue its conspiracy theory that results which incriminate O.J. Simpson are part of a plot to frame him.
Here in Sioux Falls, it's not often that you find a place that's unique to the entire country, but we've done just that. It's a furniture store located in the Western Mall called Amnica. They're selling furniture there that's really turning heads, and tonight Scott Bowden shows us the store and introduces us to the man who's giving Sioux Falls a little taste of Europe.
I like make a travel to United States and see this country. Yeah, it's like my dream before. Now it's my dream come true, right? Yeah.
Meet Vol Meshchikov. He's a Russian immigrant from a small republic called Estonia. He moved to Sioux Falls 3 years ago, and for the most part, he says he likes it here. The town is clean, the people are friendly, and he says everyone's eager to help him out whenever he needs it.
In Sioux Falls, people show me this place, what I'm looking for. Maybe they very busy, and people drive with me and show me a place what I need. You know.
Well, now Vo wants to give something back to the community, so he opened this furniture shop in the Western Mall called Emnika, and he's selling furniture that's turning people's heads.
Some people just stop, like push brake car, just stop and look around. Oh, I don't see this place before, and something different. Lots of colors furniture. Some people ask me, "This is real leather?" I says, "Yes, it's real leather furniture." Oh, okay. And some people sit down and tell me, "I don't understand why it's so comfortable." You know?
It's comfortable, but have you ever heard of a president, a Nicole, or even a UFA? Probably not. It's because these Finland designs are the only ones sold in America, but they'll cost you a pretty penny, some up to $3,600. But Vo's confident these designs will sell.
This is furniture, it's very light. I think kids can move this furniture very easy. It's it's good quality wood, good quality leather. And I tell you again, I think it's good design.
Okay. Yeah. So whether you come to Emnika to look at the president, the Nicole, or just to check out the UFA, Vo's hoping that he brings a taste to Europe right here to Sioux Falls. In Sioux Falls, Scott Bowden, News 5.
Well, we may have some rocking and rolling in the skies overnight, huh?
Yeah, this just in, a tornado on the ground just south of Omaha, about 24 miles. So severe weather this late at night. We have more rain to talk about in South Dakota, but there could be some severe weather. We'll explain it all after this.
What makes a car dealer different? Announcing the results of Ford Motor Company's QCP survey.
East of Brookings, again, March 2nd, 1995, taken by Chris Johnson. She is an SDSU student, and this was taken and sent to me, one of Cook's weather picks. Current conditions in Sioux Falls, cloudy skies, 56 degrees, 55 is our dew point, east winds at 16, and our pressure is now on the rise at 29.56. Before we get to the severe weather, let's talk a little bit about some rainfall totals. 2.6 inches just as the last hour in a 24-hour span in Aberdeen. There is an urban and small stream advisory for all of Aberdeen and the surrounding towns, so if there are areas where roads are covered by water, please do not try to cross them, as your car can be swept away very quickly, and sewers are backing up all around Aberdeen and surrounding communities. Pierre, 0.91 inches so far today in 24 hours, and down to Sioux Falls, about 1/3 of an inch, and Hill City in the western half of the state, 3.06 inches of rain. We've had enough. South Dakota is fast becoming the land of 5,000 extra large ponds. 56 in Sioux Falls, 53 in Brookings, 50 in Watertown, 58 in Brisk.
Call Harold's Travel now to make your reservations. The Harold's Travel toll-free number is 1-800-605-TRIP. That's Harold's Travel, 1-800-605-TRIP. Call Harold's Travel now.
Depending on our weather, Sioux Falls will be the site for 2 North Central Conference tournaments this week. Beginning on Thursday at Ronkin Field, Augustana will host the NCC men's baseball tournament. Here's a quick look at first-round pairings, with Augie opening up against Northern Colorado Thursday afternoon at 4. The double elimination tournament runs through Sunday. And beginning on Friday at Bowden Field, right next door, the NCC regional softball tournament, with Augustana the #1 seed and the tourney hosts. Augie finished second to Nebraska Omaha over the weekend in the NCC championship in St. Cloud. With showers and thunderstorms predicted in Chicago tonight, that's exactly what the Minnesota Twins could use after their 17th inning marathon in Cleveland yesterday. Young Pat Mahomes back on the mound for the Twins after lasting just 5 innings in his 2 previous starts combined. He takes to the mound tonight wondering, how do you win in the majors? And it's not like Frank Thomas is going to show him how. He says welcome to Chicago with a 2-run shot to dead center field. Twins down 2-0 in the first. Still in the first, Mahomes serving up batting practice. It's Warren Newsom with a solo shot. 3-0 Pale Hose after 1. The Twins do score a run in the second and 1 more in the third. but lose again tonight from the long ball. 4-2 to Chicago. They face each other tomorrow once again. A quick check on the American League scoreboard. Cleveland shuts out the Kansas City Twins 6-2, and Texas leading Oakland. That one just underway. In Atlanta tonight, Coach Bobby Cox back in the dugout less than 24 hours after being arrested for a domestic dispute with his wife last night. Tom Glavine on the mound for the Braves, serving up the long ball. Greg Jeffries, a 2-run shot to begin the game down in Atlanta. Atlanta down 2-0 after 1 in the second. The Phils will score again on Lenny Dykstra's single to right field. 3-0 Phillies. Atlanta scores twice, but it's not enough as Philadelphia wins their 5th in a row, 3-2 over Atlanta. Here's a check on the senior circuit scoreboard. 6-3, Houston beats Pittsburgh. Montreal over Florida tonight. Chicago beating St. Louis in the 7th, and just underway LA and San Diego. The NBA playoffs have moved into the second round with the young Lakers visiting San Antonio tonight and trail 1-0 in that series. And we check out game 2 in the opening half. Eddie Jones not intimidated by the Admiral in the paint at all. He gets the slam, and the Lakers still trailed by 5 early. This one was back and forth all night long. The Lakers on the fast break, and David Robinson rejects Anthony Peeler's shot. Then it's Robinson on the fast break. Sean Elliott ends it up with the 2-hand slam. Spurs up by 13 in the second. This one would go into overtime with the Spurs winning in overtime 97-90. Dennis Rodman, 22 points and 22 rebounds for the Spurs, who now lead that series 2-0. The quest for the Stanley Cup continued tonight, where it's playoff time in the NHL. In Philadelphia, the Flyers hosting Buffalo, where in Game 1, Philadelphia won in overtime without their star center, Eric Lindros. And Eric Lindros would be on the sidelines tonight. In the first period, Rod Brendamore takes the bounce off a saber skate, and it's his first goal of the playoffs. 1-0 Philadelphia. And there's Eric sitting in the stands. As in the second, it's Brendamore again on the break. He finds Rob Demio for the one-timer. The Flyers up 3-0 and go on to beat Buffalo 3-1 and take a 2-0 lead in that series. Flyers goalie Ron Hextall had 29 saves to spark the Flyers' defense. Here's a check on the rest of the games in the NHL tonight. Pittsburgh beats Washington 5-3. New York over Quebec, big to tie that series at 1 apiece. And one other game on the ice tonight. If we can check that score out. Nope, I guess we won't. We'll head back. The Minnesota Vikings are tightening their wallets this spring. In a move to save money, the Vikes released running back Terry Allen today. Allen returned back from knee surgery last year to rush for more than 1,000 yards to lead Minnesota, but according to the Vikings, his production dropped off somewhat in the second half of the season, and his $1.5 million salary made him too expensive to keep. And a quick check, wet round, high school golf tournament this afternoon. Third round of the city tournament. O'Gorman with the big lead. Medalist Ashley Evans from OG, 44. That fourth and final round is Wednesday at their Westward Ho, and hopefully it'll be a lot nicer than today on the links.
Doesn't sound like it will, but we'll hope so. Thanks, John. In a moment, a happy ending to the story of a dog-napped Tetley.
A Chihuahua comes home after payment of ransom. Next on KDLT News.
Stihl, maker of the #1 selling brand of chainsaw worldwide, also makes a full line of trimmers with enough power to handle almost any size job. It could be one of the more useful tools you'll ever own. Available in Stihl territory, starting at $79.95.
Mommies are delicate, mommies are dear. Mine cooks and cleans a lot, mine's always near. She's so sweet, she's tidy and kind.
You don't have the same old mom.
She washes, she knits to unwind.
We don't have the same old gifts. You'll find savings throughout the store at Dayton's Mother's Day sale, now through Sunday.
Today in the public schools, Katie Dorme wrote her last name without any help. Jessica Enya spun through the air with the greatest of ease. And Andrew Lopez discovered how to make an airplane soar with the wind. For every child with dreams, for all parents with a dream for their children, the public schools are where small miracles happen every day.
It's Chevrolet's open house at your Heartland Chevy dealer. Time to take a little spin. In Motor Trend Magazine's Truck of the Year, the 95 Chevy Blazer. Blazer comes standard with V6, automatic, airbag, 4-wheel analog brakes, air conditioning, 4-wheel drive, child security, 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. With all that going for it, Blazer's still over $3,000 less than Explorer. The one that isn't Truck of the Year. The award. The winner. Blazer at your Heartland Chevy dealer.
Finally tonight, we have the doggonda story out of New York.
A tiny Chihuahua is back home tonight after being dog-napped. Tetley was riding in a duffel bag her owners carry her around in when Saturday on the subway somebody snatched the satchel and took off. Glenn Edwards offered a $1,000 reward, no questions asked, for Tetley's return. Well, today a woman in Harlem phoned to say she bought the dog for $20. She realized it was Tetley after seeing news reports. The woman called the Edwards family, got the reward, and returned Tetley.
And he looks pretty happy tonight.
He looked happy to be home, didn't he? We're looking for some tough weather out there.
Yeah, earlier we just mentioned the fact that there was a tornado warning just south of Omaha. Now just coming in, a small stream flood advisory for Aurora, Douglas, and Davison counties. Reports of up to 3 1/3 inches of rain in just the last 3 hours. So please don't try to cross any roads in that area. It's a dangerous flooding situation.
Let's pay attention and stay alert.
Definitely.
That's it for now. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 and 10. Till then, have a good night.
Jay Leno's next with The Tonight Show. Good night.
The NBC studios in Burbank, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, featuring Kevin Eubanks and The Tonight Show Band. Tonight, Jay welcomes 5-year-old actor Luke Tarsitano, the Reverend Jesse
Boomer. You might be on track for a looming crisis. The sons of the Soviet Union paraded along the brick pavement, a red square, many of them wearing the medals and ribbons from the nation's fight against Hitler's German war machine. The Soviet Union lost 27 million people in the war, more than any other country. Today's ceremonies marking Victory Day are the first since the celebration in 1945.
While the veterans marched, Russian warplanes streaked by overhead. A decorated Russian fighter pilot carried the original red sickle and hammer flag. The Soviet troops put atop the German Parliament building, the Reichstag in Berlin. Soviet troops helped capture Berlin on April 30th, 1945.
Following the parade, Russian President Boris Yeltsin watched a show of military might at a new war memorial in western Moscow. Tanks and rocket launchers rumbled past the cheering crowds. Among the world leaders recalling the sacrifices of Russian troops and those of other countries was President Clinton.
I say to you, President Yeltsin, and to all the people of Russia and the other republics of the former Soviet Union, the Cold War obscured our ability to fully appreciate what your people had suffered and how your extraordinary courage helped to hasten the victory we all celebrate today.
President Yeltsin cut the ribbon to the new war memorial complex that includes a war museum, a 468-foot obelisk, a mile-long promenade, restaurants, and a theme park.
Well, it has been a long, long night for the people of the New Orleans area. A powerful spring storm has left the Crescent City and its suburbs virtually awash. The storm dumped as much as 15 inches of rain in the area in less than 12 hours. Water in some streets ranges from as high as car wheels to 8 feet high on others. Many motorists have been stranded since 10 o'clock last night. High water and debris has also forced New Orleans Airport to close overnight. Authorities say anything that could float onto the runways did. Joining us by telephone for an update of the situation is Iggy Rosales of the Kenner, Louisiana Fire Department. Can you update us, Mr. Rosales, first on what the situation is now?
Well, right now the city's pretty much paralyzed. Nobody's going in and nobody's going out. As far as the fire department, they're pretty much the only ones that are still responding to emergency calls as well as medical calls, since fire trucks are the only ones that can pretty much get through this flood. The firefighters now would normally be getting off Central Time at 7 a.m., and we just finished working 24 hours. We're pretty much exhausted and drenched, and we would normally be getting off at 7 a.m., but since our release cannot make it in, we're going to have to go ahead and work another 24, which would be a 48.
Well, has the flooding and the inundation of the city made your job more difficult or easier?
It's made it a lot difficult. We had the only vehicles that could make it through to residents just on regular medical calls were ladder trucks, engine companies, rescue squads. A lot of the cars that were underneath water, and people just left their vehicles in the middle of the street. We kind of had to veer around them and drive on neutral grounds just to get to residents.
Are there people out on the streets or elsewhere around the area that are in trouble that you know of and stranded that need your help?
A lot of people are stranded. Nobody's really in trouble, thank God. Nobody was hurt. We had no fatalities and really no injuries that were caused by the flood. Wherever the individuals were, like around 7 o'clock last night, that's pretty much where they stayed. Whether it was a place of business, a gas station, a fast food restaurant, pretty much everybody is staying put for right now. Last night we were trying to bring people to a few shelters. We have a few shelters throughout the city. We were trying to transport. We were picking them up with fire trucks, like elderly people, sick people, handicapped people, bedridden people, stuff like that, when their house started kind of going underwater.
What's the status of the flooding right now? Is the water going up or down?
Well, right now it seems like it's going down, but that's not saying a whole lot. We still have throughout parts of the city, we still have up to 12 inches of water. But the rain stopped. The drizzling stopped. The sun's kind of coming up. Now you can pretty much see all the damage. All the major streets throughout the city is closed.
All right, thanks for talking with us, Mr. Rosales. Let us right now join Valerie Voss for a quick bird's eye view of the weather picture beginning, I guess, there, Val.
Exactly, Bob. We're looking at the radar summary, and you do see an area of showers that really has moved out of southeastern Louisiana, the New Orleans area, more into southern Mississippi, and there have even been reports of tornadoes associated with this area of bright red and orange. A tornado watch is in effect across parts of southeastern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle until 11 a.m. local time. Of course, all of this is associated with a low pressure center through the Central Plains that reaches into the upper atmosphere, so it's not going to be moving anywhere very quickly. You can just about see the circulation around it, of course, counterclockwise. Rain has been heavy as well across some sections of South Dakota, especially the Aberdeen area. Some flooding reported in that region, and we're going to continue to see the heavy rains coming down along with the potential for severe weather in an area actually from the Mississippi River through the Ohio River Valley and down to the Gulf Coast. You do see some
Counties lost roads and bridges, and homeowners suffered damage to their homes in rising water. Already the rainfall this spring has South Dakotans looking toward the federal government for relief from Mother Nature. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has people in South Dakota this week surveying damage already caused by the spring storms. Governor Bill Janklow says he's glad they are here and they don't have far to look to find damage from the rain.
I flew up to Aberdeen last evening for an announcement of a new business, and as we broke through the clouds at about 1,900, 2,000 feet, northeast of Aberdeen, there was honestly more water than there was land in sight. I'm 55 years old and I've never seen anything like this. I mean, seriously, I've never seen anything like this. It literally looks like the Florida Everglades without the vegetation.
Farmers are finding it nearly impossible to plant a crop this spring, and every day more eastern South Dakota counties declare a local disaster. Well, wetlands are places where there is sometimes or often a small pond. Government restrictions keep farmers from draining those wetlands in order to provide a habitat for wildlife. And as you might expect, those regulations are not popular with many farmers. But as John Austin found out today, the abundance of wetlands this year might be keeping the prairie from flooding worse than it is.
The federal government has contracted over 8,000 wetland preservation easements with South Dakota farmers, 75% of them on small sloughs and marshes, dry more years than wet. To remain qualified for the federal farm program, producers can farm the ground when they can, but they may not dig ditches to drain the wetlands in an effort to get an earlier start on planting. Recent decisions by ag and environmental officials to relax regulations are getting understandably high marks from politicians and producers hard-pressed by this wet spring.
Farmers are stewards of the soil, and they're not going to be, there's areas that you can drain, that you can farm without any problem. Some of this wetland out there that they farm 8 out of 10 years doesn't raise any ducks on it anyway.
and probably should have never been wetland.
We're not just talking about ducks. We're talking about the watersheds and the ability of those watersheds to store water. The place a watershed stores water is in wetlands. You drain the wetlands and you create flooding. You don't prevent flooding by draining wetlands.
It's a lose-lose and rather than a win-win situation.
Farmer and former Brookings County Commissioner Don Larson carries his share of political bruises caused by the wetlands issue, but still hopes the majority of the current program will survive the '95 Congress.
The thing of it is that we have to sit down as people involved in agriculture and also people involved in the environmental preservation of our country and work together so that we can facilitate any kind of a wetland or restoration preservation program. It also has its amenities and fits in with a modern agricultural system that we have today.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is working with farmers and the Ag Department to determine where short-term ditching and other temporary drainage solutions may be possible. Farmers with questions are urged to contact Consolidated Farm Services. In southern Brookings County, John Austin, News 5.
Tourism is South Dakota's second largest industry, second only to agriculture in new money brought into the state. But according to the White House Office of U.S. Travel and Tourism, there is even more South Dakota could do to bring those tourists in. Beth Fuller has the story on how the government reached out to lend a hand of expertise.
Your eyes on?
Each year, more than 200,000 people visit the Great Plains Zoo and Delbridge Museum. Today, Undersecretary of Commerce for Travel Greg Farmer was one of them. Sioux Falls is just one stop on his cross-country tour. He's been giving cities and states ways they can attract more tourists.
This is an industry about jobs. We're the second largest employer in America. Every 2.5 seconds in the world, a new job is created in the travel and tourism industry.
Farmer says the good news is South Dakota doesn't have a bad image among tourists, but he says the state needs to work hard at promotion and raising awareness of what it has to offer.
Conferences like we're having today to look at 9 areas, everything from product development to research to the way we market ourselves, bring the industry together with the public sector to say, how do we show off what's so great about this area?
He says states and regions should aim for international travelers coming from Europe and Asia, but cities like Sioux Falls should think domestic. Terry Ellis from the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce agrees. She says the city has a lot to offer visitors.
People are on their way to the Black Hills, and what Sioux Falls has to continue to do more aggressively all the time is educate those travelers before they ever leave home that Sioux Falls is the best place to stop on the way west and that we're a perfect one-day's drive.
Farmer says highlighting destinations like Sioux Falls is the key to successful tourism because the more places travelers stop in the state, the more money they bring in. In Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
The Brookings County Commission today cleared the way for construction of a new $30 million soybean processing plant near Volga. The board voted 3-0 to change the Volga plant site zoning to commercial. 2 of the Brookings County Commissioners are stockholders in that proposed plant. They both abstained from the voting. The South Dakota Soybean Processors Cooperative plans to employ up to 70 people at the plant when it's finished, possibly by next year. The plant will crush soybeans and turn the raw products into soybean meal and oil to enhance their value in marketing. Well, coming up, some dramatic home video from 2 different states as severe weather plagues the Midwest. Next on News 5.
Steel
into the river. The body has not been found yet, and now Bell says the police forced him to falsely confess. At the time of Gina's disappearance, Bell lived in her neighborhood. In the O.J. Simpson double murder trial, today, prosecution professor of DNA was back on the stand explaining to the jury how DNA works in identifying a criminal suspect or a victim. But there was also an unusual development today, the blood of a still unidentified person inside Simpson's Bronco. John Gibson has the story.
Testimony, there are only 2 particular samples that are involved.
Up until now, the prosecution has said that O.J. Simpson's blood is mixed with the blood of both victims inside his Bronco. But now prosecutors have admitted there is also the blood of someone other than victims Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson.
Frankly, that stain is a little bit different than the others as well because while consistent with Mr. Simpson, there's obviously another contributor that is not directly related or may not be directly related to this case on the steering wheel.
Strangely, no screams from the defense table yet, though it seems likely They will seize on this result and perhaps link it to their theory of a mystery killer. The mystery blood aside, in testimony today, DNA expert Robin Cotton showed the jury autoradiographs, pictures on film of the test results. But the actual DNA test results were held back until tomorrow. Instead, the jury got a lot of the prosecution's main point, that just like the Mounties, DNA always gets its man or woman.
There is no environmental force, there is no environmental effect that can work to simply change one type and make it become another.
District Attorney Gil Garcetti said today he believes this DNA evidence is getting through to the jury.
But you always rely, as you do perhaps in any case, on 1, 2, 3 or more jurors who are going to be able to help others get through the process during deliberations.
Another type of crime closer to home. A Brant, South Dakota man pleaded guilty this week in federal court to charges related to tampering with automobile odometers. 35-year-old Stephen Paul Burnt admitted altering the mileage readings on 66 different cars, then mailing the car titles showing the lower odometer readings to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Federal prosecutors say the loss to consumers amounted to more than $119,000 overall. Burnt now faces up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, or both, for the scam. He will receive sentence on August 7th. One day a year, several Sioux Falls teachers move over in the classroom to let people from the community come in to become teachers for a day. So today, hundreds of kids found they had a new face helping them learn about reading, writing, and arithmetic and other things too. Cammie Melton has the story.
Instead of clipping on a microphone today, Sherry Kurtz pulled up a chair and taught some Axtell Park middle schoolers what it's like to be a KDLT anchor woman. But she also learned what it's like to be a student these days.
Any kind of story? Can you choose what kind of story you read? They give you a whole bunch of different kinds of stories, and they give you parts of a story.
And Sherry is a guest teacher for a day here with Mrs. Weasler's class, giving students a change of pace and an up-close and personal look at a professional in another field. But it's also a day of adult learning.
It gives us a chance to, or the teacher a chance to, see other jobs and see what other people are doing, and it also lets those people come in and meet our students. So.
Jeremiah is wondering what he wants to do for a living. Today was a chance for him to narrow down the options.
When you talk to them, they tell you about what they want to do, and then you're like, I don't know yet.
If you want to do it, you can do it. And I really enjoy the give and take and trying to make a difference in what we're doing.
Next door, Dave Munson is taking the opportunity to get back into the classroom and explain to these sixth graders how and why he became a representative.
I'm good at debating. I like to argue my points, and my mom said I'd be good at that, and so I decided that I'd ask him about that and see, because it'd probably be something I'd like.
And Dave is learning how these students have changed since he was a teacher about 17 years ago.
You're learning what young people are like today, and you're seeing the different perspective. I think they're more open and more willing to share with, and ask you questions, and so I just think there's more openness today.
And he's hoping these students will be open to his message of never giving up, because Dave says he believes that they can reach any goal if they work hard enough. In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
The city of Yankton has a new mayor, and her honor's name is Jean Hunhoff. Hunhoff becomes the first woman ever to be mayor of Yankton, but she said today that's no big deal. Jean Hunhoff replaces Terry Crandall, who decided not to seek re-election last year. The Yankton City Commission elected Jean Hunhoff to the mayoral job today. She is in her second term as a Yankton City Commissioner right now. The South Dakota Make-A-Wish Foundation is making a wish come true for itself with a dream home that will make dreams come true for some deserving kids in the future. The Make-A-Wish people broke ground today on an 1,100 square foot home in southwest Sioux Falls. The home, built by volunteer labor with totally donated materials, will sell for about $75,000. That money will then go into the Make-A-Wish Foundation Trust to provide money for 2 additional wishes every year for children suffering life-threatening diseases. And Make-A-Wish knows what most of the wishes from those kids will be.
Disney World. Kids in South Dakota just would do anything to go to Disney World, and most of them have never been there, never had an opportunity to go to Disney World. And Disney World and Give Kids the World is a facility down there that really helps us in the cost of it. They kind of subsidize a little bit of it too.
Besides Disney World, Knipe says children's wishes include computers, toys, and playground equipment. 5 children who had their wish come true already, along with Sioux Falls Mayor Gary Hansen, helped to break ground on the dream house today, the one that will make other dreams come true. Well, we can apparently count ourselves lucky to have to contend only with daily deluges of rain these days. Look what the people around Auburn, Nebraska, near Omaha, faced last night. This incredible scene was taped on a home video camera by Rich Wilson. You can see 2 tornadoes touching down at the same time. The storms destroyed several buildings on nearby farms, but there were no injuries. The storms rumbled through the Auburn area at about 8 last night. And also, we have some more amateur video to show you tonight. This one, early tonight, a tornado touching down in northern Illinois. This dramatic home video shows the tornado just forming. There were as many as 5 like this one on the ground at any one time. The twisters turned over 6 tractor-trailer rigs and as many as 12 cars on Interstate 55. In Salisbury, Illinois, a mobile home was overturned. 1 person hurt there. At least 6 homes south of Athens destroyed. A school lost its roof. Utility poles, power lines all downed, and the destruction spread through 6 Illinois counties. Whoever videotaped that has some nerves of steel, don't they?
That's right. And also, we can add to that there are 26 other reports of tornadoes today. A very active day in the middle of the country, and we think things will quiet down. We'll try to talk about that, and plus the weekend forecast after this.
Centennial Carpets is moving to...
Certainly, in handling the dramatic changes in the world that happened, Desert Storm, I think, which mobilized a coalition that's historic and sent a message around the world that a big country is not going to take over a little one. That was terribly important. The way we handled Gorbachev and Yeltsin at the end of the Cold War was important. And now, irony of ironies, they said of me, this man had no domestic program, and yet many of the things that I tried to do that were blocked automatically by the Democratic Congress have now been passed and are in the process of being passed by a Republican Congress. So that this isn't a political show, but I at least have the satisfaction of knowing that much of what we stood for on the domestic scene will become law now. And so, you know, that was kind of an interesting footnote to my presidency.
The day you were inaugurated, there was something that piqued my interest. You held 2 Bibles.
That's right.
Would you describe them?
Well, I held the Bible that George Washington held 200 years before. It was the 200th anniversary of the swearing in of the presidents, and then I held a family Bible.
Where do they keep George Washington's Bible?
Not sure.
It was in New Jersey, I think, or maybe New York, but they brought it. And I mean, you felt like you were holding something very, very valuable. Of course we were, but...
You met a lot of interesting people as the First Lady and President. One of the humorous stories in your book that I enjoyed was when you tried to hold a conversation with Emperor Hirohito.
I sound like such a buffoon, but I did write it in the book, so I guess it's fair. But I sat next to Emperor Hirohito in their brand new, beautiful palace, and he was such a gentle, nice man. And I would say, well, I went to your children's school today, and he'd say, yes. I'd say, well, do your grandchildren go there? Yes. And that's sort of the way the lunch went. And I ran out of things. And finally, I had heard we passed the old palace on the way in. And I'd said, you know, your palace is very beautiful. Thank you. Finally, I said, what happened to the old one? Did it crumble? And he said, I'm sorry to tell you, you bombed it. That ended that conversation. I felt so stupid. Oh, terrible.
An amazing feeling, though, because here was this man who, for the symbol of everything wrong, for all of us that served back in the 40s and World War II. I mean, Hitler on one hand, leading the Axis, and Hirohito. Then you meet him, and you see a gentle, quiet man, obviously very revered and respected in his own country. And it was so different than the symbol that we fought against in World War II. And when I was president, he died, and the debate ensued. Should President Bush go to pay honor to fallen emperor. And I decided I would do it, and a lot of the veterans groups, for very understandable reasons, were upset with me for doing that. I don't think the British sent anybody because of the horrors they recalled from Southeast Asia. But I did the right thing, Ralph. I went there and said that we were going to look ahead and not look back. And because I'd fought for my country, I had the credentials so they couldn't turn on me and say, well, you have no feeling about... I'd lost a lot of comrades. I had a lot of feeling about that. And I thought it was very important that we pay our respects and that we look ahead and salute Japan for being a democracy and for being our ally 45 years later then.
People say to me, what's he doing today? Meaning you. So what are you doing today?
Well, trying to be a point of light in our community. We're building a presidential library that this wonderful event in Nashville helped. I'm on the board of our great cancer center, the MD Anderson, which is one of the truly great cancer centers. Chairman of the Eisenhower Exchange Fellowships, which brings students from leaders, tries to identify leaders in various countries, brings them here. There's a lot of charitable things we can now do, and that's it.
Actually, the question should be, what are they doing? Because you've done everything together.
For speaking, go out and the way I make a living is giving some speeches, some free for charity, some being paid, because I've decided to stay out of business deals and off of all boards of directors, lest there be any conflict or bringing some kind of dishonor in some way to my previous job. And that leaves speaking, and we can do that and get our own schedule set.
Tell me about the library. Library, you've broken ground for it.
Broken ground. It'll be finished. It's being built at Texas A&M, which has the 3rd or 4th biggest campus in the United States. And there's great resources there already, a school for the study of presidential studies. We'll have a school of public service there that will help inculcate into these young people the concept that they should serve. We'll do more encouraging this concept of volunteerism that I call point of light, being a point of light. And Barbara and I both do a little teaching or lecturing up there and learning. It's a heavenly thought. We'll have a little apartment up there. It's built with private funds, incidentally, and it's gone well. We're very happy with the way it's going.
What do you plan to teach?
I don't expect I'll be teaching, but
lectures to kids?
I think probably. Since George got his favorite charities in, I've got to throw mine in. I'm on the Mayo Clinic board, Foundation board, which I really enjoy being on, and working with the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. And we're doing a lot of work with Boys and Girls Clubs, different groups that really encourage reading, family. I'm into family literacy. I'm trying to encourage people to send their children to school reading ready while keeping the family close and pointing out that the biggest responsibility you have in life, if you've opted to have children, you have got to take care of them.
What was the advice your father gave you?
My father said there are only 3 things you can give your children. A good education. Set a good example. That's a very big one. And all the love in the world. And I would add trust. And I would say George Bush did all that and much, much more for his children.
He is your hero, isn't he?
He is my hero, that's right.
Okay, folks. With us. And again, I want to tell you what a pleasure it was having you come to our town and to share your 50th wedding anniversary. That was a lovely evening.
We loved it. Thank you very much.
Seems to me we've done this before, Ralph.
Yes, I believe we have. And then I believe that evening was concluded with Vince Gill singing Look at Us.
Was it not the most beautiful?
And then everybody went to the stage and sang Irving Berlin's song, I'll Be Loving You Always.
Did we?
Yes.
That's pretty
romantic.
nice. That's
you didn't
pretty.
Even listen.
Oh.
So you know how it is, Ralph.
I just sing that to him every day.
Mrs. Bush, Mr. President, Millie, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We love being with you.
I can tell Millie really got uptight.
She's just into it, and it's really upsetting to her.
Club Dance, the Mother's Day Show, TNN Friday. You're watching TNN, the Nashville Network, the #1 source for...
Had prevented planning problems, that they will have a recovery, that sign-up dates will have some common sense to them, that we more fully utilize our CRP acreage, that we have some loan repayment delay for farmers' home borrowers, and as also that we work with the FEMA director to make sure that we have some consolidated strategy relative to disaster programs in South Dakota.
Well, the state of South Dakota today set up a flood emergency hotline to try to help those affected by the high water to get some relief. Municipal officials and others with problems or emergencies arising from the flooding can call to get quick advice on what to do. The state plans to staff those phones from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening. The hotline number is 605-773-5058.
And to make matters worse, the persistent rains are already putting numerous South Dakota road construction projects way behind schedule this spring. But as Scott Bowden reports, contractors say they are still confident they will meet their deadlines.
I got a lot of people calling wanting to go back to work, but we just can't put them to work, and we're not the only contractor in town that's like that.
Tim Nelson is the contracting supervisor for the Western Ave interchange and the 57th Ave tunnel projects. All the rain this spring has not only been slowing his operations down, but he says it's also hurting his employees.
Well, it's hurting our people because we can't hire all our people back to keep them busy. We can't hire people from Sioux Falls to keep them busy, and everything's just falling behind.
The biggest problem for Nelson is this tunnel on 57th Street, which will soon link northern Lincoln County developments to Louise Avenue.
Tunnel is the controlling operation on the job. It requires the most amount of work, and with the mud we can't access in there. We're in about the lowest area here in Sioux Falls, I think.
But Department of Transportation engineer Steve Ramus is doing everything he can to help them out.
We've pulled the crews off the tunnel and they're working over on the structures, so hopefully we can get some of that work done early this year, so when we can get in the tunnel area we can go full force over there and maybe catch up, maybe not.
Ramus is confident these projects should be completed by their deadline of November 1st. It'll just mean when it does stop raining, workers will have to work extra hours to get it done.
We work an average of a 10-hour day, but we're going to have to go to 12s, and hopefully we don't have to start working Saturdays, and it's just the sun's got to shine.
In Sioux Falls, Scott Bowden, News 5.
And as though driving through water, running water, were not bad enough, this spring's pothole problems in the streets is still a pain for motorists. As Beth Fuller tells us tonight, if you thought potholes were only an early spring problem, think again.
Signs of spring are everywhere. Some you see, others you feel. Usually by this time of year, pothole problems fade away with other winter unpleasantries. But thanks to recent rainfall, the hot mix of asphalt and aggregate isn't sticking the way it should. And almost as soon as they're patched, the mix is worn away.
I think we've been doing quite a job filling them every day. And we will fix them more permanently come summer.
The state is responsible for main streets like Minnesota and part of Cliff and East 10th. And for weeks, state crews have been working day and night, sun or snow, to make travel smoother for motorists. So until we get more consistent cooperation from Mother Nature, the surest sign of spring may be a flashing yellow arrow. In Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
In a moment, a mystery illness invades Minnesota.
It's a rash, it's a respiratory problem, but what is it? Coming up next on News 5.
Does the concrete in your garage, driveway, or business look like this?
Are there oil stains, cracks, deterioration from road salts, and damage from freeze-thaw conditions? Do you have a dusting problem? Constant exposure to these elements can force you to replace your concrete unless you do preventive maintenance to protect it. Concrete Image Maintainers wants to help you by sealing your concrete before it becomes a problem. Remember, concrete isn't indestructible. Protect your investment and avoid replacement costs. Call Concrete Image Maintainers.
Come into Ben-Hur Ford's extended $10 million inventory clearance sale. Last month's sale was such a success that we're bringing in even more inventory from other Ford dealers. And we're stretching the savings for 2 more weeks. Buy America's best-selling truck, Ford F-Series, at 4.9%. Buy or lease an F-Series and get $750 cash back. Hurry in today or find out more by calling 1-800-NEW-FORD.
Working harder, treating you right, it's Ben-Hur Ford.
McKinnon Hospital's Caring for Life series presents this medical moment.
Death from trauma is more likely to occur in the country than in the city, and that's why acting quickly when someone is injured could mean the difference between life and death. The Verified Trauma Center at McKinnon Hospital knows how important time is. Our trauma team is waiting for a patient when they arrive, conserving life-saving seconds. If trauma strikes, ask to go to the Verified Trauma Center at McKinnon Hospital.
This medical moment is brought to you by McKinnon Hospital because we care about your life.
Minnesota, which already in recent months had to contend with a bacteria in ice cream, an outbreak of meningitis, and a rash of deadly strep infections, now has a new one, a mystery illness.
This one in Wilmer, Minnesota is forcing school officials to take some drastic action. Rick Capcella reports.
5-year-old Grace Swank is out of school today. The Early Childhood Learning Center in Wilmer is closed. No hands for the puppets, no eyes for the books, and no idea when things will get better. All we know is the people here just kept getting sick.
But the ones that haven't have really gotten zapped.
Ron Werner shared this office with 3 secretaries, every one of whom took ill. Respiratory problems started shortly after carpet installation. They changed the carpet, but they all stayed sick. In addition to the respiratory problems, they've now developed rashes, skin irritations like bug bites that began to spread, first to different parts of the body, then to different members of the family. School officials moved to shut the place down for fear it would spread to the kids.
We didn't want to take a chance of students breaking out with rashes, and we just felt we needed to call additional experts in to do some further specific testing.
The victims have been to multiple specialists. They've relayed the carpet and sprayed for bugs and literally froze the children's textbooks to kill any possible mold. Tests have been run throughout the Twin Cities and Washington, D.C. and Canada. Still nobody knows what's wrong.
That is weird. It is weird. It is, the word we use is bizarre. Just absolutely bizarre.
The illness, which apparently is not life-threatening, is not going away either, so the kids had to. You can't fight what you don't know.
Well, I think it's good because I wouldn't want my children to be, susceptible to any kind of bugs or anything like that.
So far, no children are infected with the mystery disease, but school is probably out for the rest of the year.
A fire broke out tonight at about 6 in the upstairs of 816 South Glendale in Sioux Falls, and it's put a woman and her 3 children out of their home. When firefighters arrived, they found smoke coming from the upstairs and the people at home at the time out safely. There was a problem initially attacking the fire because of limited access to the interior. Firefighters had the flames under control in about 20 minutes, though. Nobody was hurt, and the Red Cross is taking care of the family of 3 out of a home tonight.
This week, national statistics on home sales across America had some good. Mountain reports they're coming back with higher prices locally.
Fewer houses are being sold, but the ones that are getting off the market have a larger price tag attached to them. That's what the first quarter figures are showing, not only in this state and region, but across the country. January through March, the sales rate of existing South Dakota homes was down more than 6%, but realtors say that doesn't mean our housing market isn't strong. Some parts are just flatter than others.
This price range from 60 to 90 has been extremely active. Then the next phase from probably 90 to 120 is also a good price range right now, but that upper price range has been off a little bit, and so that's where we're probably seeing somewhat of our decrease in numbers from a year ago.
Although the annual sales rate of existing homes in South Dakota did decrease for the first couple months of this year, experts say that will be turned around because South Dakota and especially Sioux Falls have a stable economy and strong job growth, and those are the keys to a healthy housing market. And the new figures already reflect that, because although Although South Dakota house prices are also up, actually the 10th highest increase in the country, our prices aren't up as much as the national or regional average.
Our market here seems to remain strong. We've had new businesses coming in. Our demand for housing stays real positive, and I think that we're just seeing last year when rates did go up, we saw things kind of fall off a little bit, and that came into 1995, but right now coming into the spring summer of this year, I think we're going to see a real strong market.
Cook says he expects the second quarter figures to be as good as last year or better. In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
The government charged a second man today with the bombing of the federal building 3 weeks ago in Oklahoma City that killed 167 people. Terry Nichols, who until recently was just a material witness in the case, appeared in court today, and his son and ex-wife will appear soon before a federal grand jury. Jim Hanchett has more on that story from El Reno, Oklahoma.
The hearing only lasted about 15 minutes. Terry Nichols told his rights and the charges he faces. The FBI says Nichols helped his old Army buddy, Timothy McVeigh, carry out the bombing, and he could, if convicted, face execution.
Due to the fact that there was loss of life in and around the Murrah building, is the death penalty.
The hearing being held in a makeshift courtroom in the visitation area at the federal prison in El Reno. It is the same room where McVeigh made his last public appearance. Both men will be held in the prison here, but in separate areas. Nichols was not asked to enter a plea, and as with McVeigh, he said little.
We didn't notice any reaction on the part of Nichols at all. He simply looked straight ahead.
FBI agents said a search of Nichols' Harrington, Kansas home turned up detonator cords, blasting caps, and ground up ammonium nitrate, similar to the materials used in the bombing. Investigators also say they found anti-government literature and blue plastic barrels that match fragments found at the federal building. Nichols' ex-wife, Lana Padilla, is in Oklahoma City, meanwhile. She is expected to testify before a grand jury investigating the case. And the couple's 12-year-old son, Joshua, is not believed to be involved in the bombing, although the FBI is checking whether he could be that suspect, John Doe number 2, and whether he was with McVeigh when that Ryder truck was rented. 4 survivors of the blast are suing the company that may have made the fertilizer used in the bomb. Their lawyer, O.J. Simpson attorney Johnny Cochran. The lawsuit alleges the firm failed to reduce the explosive potential of the product.
Well, in the meantime, the other suspect in the case, Tim McVeigh, refuses to talk, calling himself a political prisoner.
Well, the prosecution in the O.J. Simpson trial today put up its smoking gun in an effort to prove that the former football great killed his former wife and her friend last summer. The blood evidence today carried with it enormously long odds that Simpson was the killer. That was the testimony today. Numbers, big numbers, that implicate O.J. Simpson. John Gibson has more.
Judge Ito was trying to get the lawyer's attention, and they weren't giving it to him.
Both counselors sanctioned $250. Get your checkbook out.
A chastened defense attorney, Peter Neufeld, wrote a check. Woody Clark got cash from prosecutor Chris Darden.
I'm not going to tolerate that kind of stuff anymore. Are we clear? March over to the court, both of you.
This outburst from Judge Ito came only 45 minutes after the judge told the jury to ignore comments from the bench, that those comments are not evidence in this case. Earlier, O.J. Simpson took a long and close look at the autoradiographs that say he is the killer. The crucial blood spot that was identified as O.J. Simpson's is from the Bundy crime scene. The DNA expert on the stand, Dr. Robin Cotton, said that almost the entire population of the U.S. would have to be searched to find a person other than Simpson who matches. The blood spot on the sock, said to be Nicole Simpson's, carries with it numbers even worse for O.J. Simpson.
And that is 1 in 6.8 billion.
The defense counter to this very damaging information is the long-expected contamination and/or frame-up theory.
Well, the weather tonight, is it going to hold? That's what everybody wants to know.
It was a superb day, and looks like half of tomorrow will be nice, but looks like after that it goes downhill. We'll be back at the forecast after you look at the address for Cook's Weather Pick.
Jobs are easier with Wagner from Menards. The self-feeding paint roller speeds up painting and cleaning, now $29.99. The 7-piece sprayer kit sprays paints and stains, on sale for $73. Improve the look of your lawn with NK Lawn Seeds. Prevail or Northland Lawn Seed is made to withstand drought and stress with easy care, just $5.95 each. Menards is the right choice for home improvement needs.
money at Menards.
In Aberdeen, it's a budding rock band. In Huron, it's their first batch of cookies. In Yankton, there are 520 people who call it a living. All across the Great Plains, we serve thousands of people in ways that make their lives easier, more rewarding, and more productive. You can call it fun, call it work, call it security, call it breakfast, call it what you will. We call it service. We're here for you. We're Northwestern Public Service Company.
Deals you like from people you can trust. Rapp Chevrolet in Marion, the place to go for the new line of Chevrolets, like the hot new Camaro and the sporty practical Cavalier. Rapp Chevrolet also has a great selection of late model GM program and off-lease vehicles. Chevrolets, Pontiacs, Buicks, and Cadillacs. You can find used and program vans, like these all-wheel drive Chevy Astros. You need a truck? Rapp Chevrolet has great deals on all sizes. The deals you like from people you can trust. Rapp Chevrolet in Marion, South Dakota.
Hi, I'm Sandy with Sandy's Collection for Talls in the Western Mall. I start off my day with the Today Show on KDLT. What a difference today makes.
Later on the Tonight Show, Jay's got a great idea for Pulp Fiction Samuel L. Jackson and Garth Brooks.
What if you guys switched hats? That'd be kind of a look.
Then it's Garth Unplugged in a rare acoustic performance, plus Supermodel Vendela and Supermodel Mania with Alexandra Wentworth. It's Thursday Night Fever, followed by an all-new Conan NBC tonight.
Well, superb weather today, and looks like we have a superb Cook's weather pick for tonight. Take a look at this one from Jessica Jensen out of the flight deck of an S3 Bravo. She was flying up above Rio de Janeiro when this cloud was taken. That is a cumulus congestus. That is the name of that type of cloud. A lot of stratiform look to it, kind of some fuzziness on the tops. Look a little bit like a giant cotton ball. Current conditions in Sioux Falls, we're looking at skies to be partly cloudy. 55 degrees, 46 is our dew point. A light southerly breeze at 9, and our pressure is down to 29.76. Out in Rapid City, their pressure already down to 29.53. Things will be dropping in the pressure throughout the day tomorrow as a new storm gathers in strength and pressures drop, and we see an increase in the amount of cloud cover across the area. 55 in Huron right now, skies are mostly clear. 53 in Aberdeen, 58 in Pierre, 57 with thunder now in the air in Rapid City, and 54 Sioux City, and 51 in Worthington, Minnesota. Daytime highs 66 in Sioux Falls, 72 in Minneapolis. We were one of the cool spots across the region, but we will get close to the 70s tomorrow, despite the fact there will be more clouds moving in. Overnight lows last night, this was not 72 in Bismarck, should have been about 42. 40 in Sioux Falls, 42 Minneapolis, 44 in Casper, Wyoming, and we'll look for lower to mid-50s tonight across most of the state. Well, it was a record-setting spring across many areas of eastern South Dakota. Some of those spots, of course, we don't have records from, but for those we do, Mitchell, 11.4 inches of rain in the first 4 months of spring. Highmore, 9.9 inches. Again, these were records for the first 4 months. And Sioux Falls, we are nearing a record of to be the wettest spring so far. 2.3 inches is all we need, and we will hit the wettest springs ever in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Scattered showers and thunderstorms now erupting across western Nebraska. Those are moving northeastward, so Pierre, let's say Mobridge, you may see a shower towards morning, and here in eastern South Dakota, let's say Watertown, Aberdeen, parts of Huron and down to Sioux Falls, we should stay dry until probably mid-afternoon tomorrow when those clouds do come in and affect our forecast. Clouds started to evaporate late this evening. It was a pleasant one. Temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. Now skies clearing out across most of the state, but clouds do increase once you get west of, let's say, Rapid City. Again, they are reporting thunder at this hour in Rapid City. Severe weather is possible anytime Friday night into early Saturday morning across eastern South Dakota, eastern Nebraska, and northwest Iowa. By the time the rest of the weekend does come around, looks like that will all shift east into Iowa, and cooler weather will stick in across the Rockies as the jet stream stays far to the south for this time of the year, and still all the warm and delightful dry weather that is sitting across the East Coast with temperatures in the 70s and 80s. Take a look at the rest of the country. Strong showers and thunderstorms erupting tonight across southern Mississippi and Alabama. Still flash flood watches in effect down there. And there was even severe weather today in northeast Wyoming and southeast Montana. Sheridan, Wyoming, had a possible tornado today, and Lodge Grass, Montana, also tornado touchdown near that region. That severe weather could be in our backyard late tomorrow afternoon and into early Saturday morning. It is all being caused by a new area of low pressure now consolidating across the plains. These two right here, they're going to team up together and increase the strength of this storm system. More showers and storms lighting up the skies tomorrow, more what we call plain pounders. Lots of rain falling from the skies late tomorrow afternoon. even some snow in the forecast for the Black Hills on Saturday afternoon, and we will see scattered hit-and-miss rain showers across our region late in the day. Tomorrow, daytime highs upper 60s east and mainly the 70s across the rest of the state. For tonight, partly cloudy. We'll call it strangely quiet, 51 degrees, the wind southeast at 5 to 15. More showers and thunderstorms likely by late tomorrow afternoon, 67. The winds howling south, 15 to 35. Showers and storms tomorrow night, some of those locally severe, 54. The wind south at 15 to 25. Here's your extended forecast showing rain continuing on Saturday, 62 degrees, and then looks like we'll finally dry out for a couple days, 57 on Sunday, a cool one and windy, and then Monday, 65 degrees. So looking pretty good, but does get wet next week.
Real wet?
Could be. Could be.
Of course, could be. The North Central Conference met on the baseball diamond this afternoon in Sioux Falls.
That's coming up next, but first, here's a fishing tip from Art Perry.
Now's the time to brush up on your skills with fishing tips from Inland Yachts.
You know, a lot of people think a jig is just a jig, but there's certain jigs that have different style heads to them, like the swimming fuzzy grub. A prime example would be that each one of these type of jigs is designed for a different type of fishing when you're out on the lake. So take a look at the packaging and look at the head and find yourself a head that will apply to the type of fishing that you're doing.
It's time to stock up on tackle with a visit to the area's best source for boating and fishing supplies, Inland Yachts.
There's family boating fun that fits in your garage and your budget.
The Johnson-powered play buoy from Inland Yachts.
It's compact family fun, like me.
The Johnson-powered play buoy can be pulled by small cars and trucks, so you can take it with you on vacation.
It really widens your horizons.
Powered by a spirited Johnson outboard, the play buoy is just $59.95, plus freight and rigging.
Where else can the whole family have so much fun?
The Johnson-powered play buoy from Inland Yachts.
The last time we were here was when I proposed. 10 years. It seems like only yesterday. I told you then how much I loved you, and nothing's changed.
The Diamond Anniversary Band. On your 10th, show her you'd marry her all over again.
Does the concrete in your garage, driveway, or business look like this? Are there oil stains, cracks, deterioration from road salts, and damage from freeze-thaw conditions? Do you have a dusting problem? Constant exposure to these elements can force you to replace your concrete unless you do preventive maintenance to protect it. Concrete Image Maintainers wants to help you by sealing your concrete before it becomes a problem. Remember, concrete isn't indestructible. Protect your investment and avoid replacement costs. Call Concrete Image Maintainers.
From Johnny to Jerry, Bette Midler guest stars on an all-new Seinfeld next Thursday.
Later on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Tracy Lord.
John Doe number 2 in the Oklahoma City bombing. A 2-year fugitive from the Springfield State Prison is arrested in New York State, and an Aberdeen teen is caught with a gun at school. Details are next.
You're watching KDLT.
Tonight arrested Stephen Garrett Colburn, a man sought in connection with the bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building 3.5 weeks ago.
Well, that arrest came in the Arizona town of Oatman. FBI agents say Colburn may have been the man driving a brown pickup that was traveling in tandem with primary bombing suspect Timothy McVeigh the day of the blast. But as Phil Schumann reports, Colburn's father says it can't be true.
Until somebody shows me, I don't believe my son was involved in that.
Robert Colburn, a well-respected Oxnard dentist, greeted the news with disbelief that his son may have somehow been involved in the Oklahoma City bombing.
Steve has always been a gentle person who has not hurt anyone as far as we know. We never had any problems with him. We do not think he ever had any problems with the law.
Stephen Garrett Colburn has had problems, both personal and with the law. Brought up in Oxnard, the one-time Eagle Scout graduated from Oxnard High School in 1978, a straight-A student.
He was very cooperative. He was never a problem. He was very cooperative.
He went on to UCLA, leaving with a degree in biochemistry. He was later employed at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center doing DNA research. But things began to unravel for Colburn in the late 80s. There was a divorce, then bankruptcy, then a 1994 arrest on a weapons charge. He eventually skipped bail and became a fugitive.
His last contact with his family was on September 17, 1994, at the wedding of his sister. Family members have lost complete contact with the man since then, but steadfastly refuse to believe he has had anything to do with Timothy McVeigh.
Well, I don't believe it. You know, I just, it appears to me that somebody's looking for a patsy.
The death toll in the Oklahoma City Federal Building bombing rose again tonight, incidentally, up now to 168. A man hospitalized for his injuries suffered in the bombing April 19th died tonight.
56-year-old Gary Heineman, who escaped 2 years ago from the Springfield State Prison guards while speaking to high school students in Hurley, is back behind bars tonight in New York State. Police in Hamburg, New York, arrested Heineman last night, who identified himself as Robert Lee Dixon. Heineman allegedly broke into a Catholic high school in Buffalo, and when police searched his car, they found 5 garbage bags full of chalices and other valuable artifacts, some of which were stolen from chapels at West Point last week. The value of the stolen church property is estimated at about $250,000. Police in Pennsylvania also suspect Heineman in the theft of $80,000 worth of church property there. Heineman was serving time for second-degree burglary at the Springfield State Prison when he escaped in April of 1993 while on a visit with students in Hurley.
And Minnehaha County jail deputies say they thwarted a jailbreak last night when they heard pounding noises coming from one of the cells. When they investigated, they report Jose Angel Garza was trying to chip concrete away from his cell window, apparently trying to break out. Garza is the man police arrested in February following a fire in an apartment house on South Spring Avenue in Sioux Falls. Garza allegedly set the fire after an argument with some people inside. The fire killed a man who has not yet been positively identified. Police say that dead man was an illegal alien who had fake identification. Garza, who could face the death penalty if convicted for arson and murder, is now in an isolation jail cell at the Minnehaha County Jail following the alleged jailbreak.
A 14-year-old student at Aberdeen Central High School will face charges in juvenile court after being found with a small caliber handgun at school today. Aberdeen police say they confiscated the weapon at Aberdeen High this morning. So far, there is no information available on why the student had the gun, but police say the student made no threats.
State Health Department employees plan an undercover investigation to find out which stores in South Dakota sell tobacco products to minors. The plan is to send underage people into various stores to try to purchase tobacco products. The legislature last year increased the penalty for selling tobacco to anyone under 18. That violation is now punishable with a $200 fine and 30 days in jail. The State Health Department says the undercover operation is necessary to preserve $400,000 in federal money for drug and alcohol problems.
The Farmore Discount Drugstore will close in Sioux Falls. Farmore is under bankruptcy protection right now. After the store closing of the Sioux Falls store and 40 others, the company will be left with 102 stores in 19 states. The Farmore in Sioux Falls is in the Western Mall.
Car washes and laundromats in Aberdeen will have to shut down operations for a while to try to reduce the load on the overworked Aberdeen sewer system. The mayor ordered the shutdown today in the wake of heavy rains earlier this week that endangered the operation of the city's sanitary sewer system. Mayor Tim Rich has asked residents also to not use any more water than absolutely necessary in Aberdeen during the crisis.
In a moment, the cost of a hospital stay keeps rising.
But locally, health care officials say it's not as bad as it could be. Next on News 5.
What happens when you take the best-selling trucks in America and customize them for the best place to live? You get the Northland Edition F-150s. These trucks come with two-tone clear coat paint, custom wheels and tires, special Northland markings, and air conditioning at no extra charge. Now for a limited time with a special $750 cashback bonus, lease this loaded XLT for $169 a month. So look for the mark of the Northland Edition F-150s. The best trucks to drive in the best place to live.
How will you know when the right insurance company comes along? Will it be the one who claims to see the farthest? Will it be the one who says they have the edge?
In the 15th row, taking a provisional tonight, is T.J. Clark, number 23. T.J. got here late, had some engine problems. Just going to take a provisional start and just try to make a couple of laps, see what he can do. Now let's take a look at our in-truck cameras. Being carried tonight first by Toby Butler in the ortho truck. See out the front windshield toward Toby's truck there. He's driving the bright yellow number 21. Also, an in-truck camera is being driven tonight by number 6, Rick Corelli, the Total Petroleum Chevrolet. There you see Corelli getting ready for the start. We're just about ready to get this thing underway, Mary.
Yep.
There you are on board in Corelli's truck. You see Portengay, the black number 83, the Coffee Critic truck. That's Steve's family business. Remember, Steve is the reigning Southwest Tour champion, but has turned most of his attention this year to the Super Truck Series by Craftsman. Bringing him down real slowly. Ron Hornaday on the outside, and Hornaday gets the jump on him. Portengay's truck does not come up to speed. The first 3 trucks go by him as they go into turn 1. You see them already 3 wide. We said there were big, wide, sweeping turns here. A lot of room to maneuver these trucks. Probably some of the widest turns that we've seen the trucks on thus far, Barry.
Yeah, Butch Miller almost got in a jam there when it got backed up on the start.
Yeah, things were really still jammed up when you got this big, wide racetrack like this. The guys think they can drive them anywhere. See the trucks. You see Hornaday in the red Papa John's truck, number 16 there. He had put a little bit of distance between himself and the field. Running second is Joe Ruttman, number 84 in the Coca-Cola truck. Third is Mike Skinner already. Skinner started 6th, wasted no time in getting up to 3rd position in the GM Goodwrench truck.
Hornaday looked awful good in practice, Glenn.
All 3 of these trucks did. In fact, it surprised me a little bit. I didn't think Skinner was quite quick enough to get that 5th straight fastest time, but he did it. Right now, he's chasing Joe Ruttman. You know, last week we saw everybody chasing Mike Skinner all night. Tonight it's a little bit different. The front 3 trucks have really opened up some margin. You're looking inside the truck or from inside the truck of Rick Corelli. That's number 6. He is just going around Portengay to take over 4th position. And you see the number 1 multicolored truck there. That's P.J. Jones. He's also trying to take the position for Portengay.
Yeah, look at Ron Esau with not much time at all in that truck. He's right there with him.
You know, Ken Schrader is on hand with us. We'll talk with him a little bit later, and he'll tell us why he's not driving the truck tonight. You see the number 52 there. And looking out the back of the truck there, you see a little bit of distance being put by Rick Corelli. Let's go back up front now. We see a challenge for the lead. Ruttman is wasting no time in the red and white number 84 Coca-Cola truck, trying to take that lead from Ron Hornaday Jr. Once again, the first 3 trucks put about 10-15 car lengths on 4th place Rick Corelli. You can just see Corelli coming into the picture there as the trucks go down the backstretch and into turn 3. A lot of room to maneuver here. Not quite enough for Ruttman yet, though. He hasn't been able to get by him. And did I say car? I guess I owe $1. Well, that's...
Yep.
And I said it right before we went to break, too, folks. So I owe $2. I know Mike Joy's loving this. You see the trucks going down the backstretch again. Hornaday in the bright red and white number 16, followed right on his bumper is Joe Ruttman. And Ruttman makes a bid for the lead. Hornaday gets a little loose coming off the corner, but he's able to hold Ruttman off. Mike Skinner in the black number 3 Goodwrench truck just sitting there biding his time, waiting for one of those guys to make a mistake.
He's too tight. Hornaday's too tight in the middle. You can see the truck wash up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you made a statement earlier on. You thought that the track might get a little tighter as things go on.
Yeah, Will, there's not much rubber down. And as it gets dark or starts to get dark, the bottom groove's going to be really tight. I think they're going to be able to move up top on newer asphalt and get a good grip and be able to turn also.
Well, I'm sure Ron Hornaday wants to see that because his truck's already moving up to the top or the middle groove anyway. You're right, it is tight. He simply cannot turn the truck, keep it down low like Ruttman can. That gives Ruttman kind of opens the door on it. Let's go down for a report from the pits from Ralph Shaheen.
Glenn, Joe Ruttman's crew has been working very, very hard and dialing in the chassis of that machine. He told me today they picked up a tenth of a second, but it's still not enough, they don't think, to really go after Mike Skinner. But right now, it seems to be helping him out quite a bit.
Well, you see Ruttman has dropped back a little bit there. A couple of truck lengths between himself and leader Hornaday, and he's got a couple of truck lengths on Mike Skinner. So they're really just kind of riding right now, feeling each other out, seeing what's happened. But in the meantime, look coming up on the rear bumper of Mike Skinner. You can just see him coming into the picture there. There you see Ruttman in second. There's Skinner. Look coming into the picture. That's Rick Corelli. Corelli was bound and determined to get things working this week. He's moving in on that front pack. He has run them down from about 15 car lengths back, Barry.
Yeah, he's keeping that truck low now because he's getting on the brakes earlier. He's keeping it on the bottom, but he's losing his momentum coming off. You can look for, when Ruttman gets by, for Skinner to go right with him.
And I said car lengths. I'm just having a field day tonight. I know Mike Joy is loving this because I laughed at him all last week. But anyway, again, looking from inside Corelli's truck, as he pulls up onto the back bumper of Mike Skinner going into turn 3. Good, exciting action going on here. We're going to take this time to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with more action from Monroe, Washington, right after this.
Being there, seeing it.
When you were 15 years old, and who were you rooting for?
I loved Geraldine Chaplin. I mean, Julie Christie was beautiful, but I wanted him to stay with Geraldine Chaplin.
I'm there, you said.
Yeah, I said, and if you're busy, I'll take over.
Yeah.
So all of that coming up today, but first, this news this Saturday morning. In the Oklahoma City bombing case, authorities are checking for possible links between Stephen Colburn and that bombing. Colburn appeared in an Arizona court on unrelated weapons charges Saturday. He's scheduled to return again on Tuesday. Now, investigators reportedly don't believe Colburn was directly involved in the bombing, but according to published reports, Colburn says he does know Timothy McVeigh, one of 2 men who is currently under arrest for that bombing. And in the O.J. Simpson murder case, his lawyers may have a difficult week ahead. They'll be attacking the DNA evidence by trying to raise doubt about how it was collected and tested. NBC's John Gibson joins us from Burbank this morning with the latest. John, good morning.
Good morning, Jack. Robin Cotton is back on the stand in the O.J. Simpson case. She has said the DNA evidence points to Simpson with a 170 million to 1 chance that it could be someone else. The defense plans to explain that damaging evidence with a theory that someone framed Simpson. The prosecution's DNA evidence says O.J. Simpson is the killer. But the Simpson defense is arguing that the prosecution's own DNA tests show that a mystery 4th person left DNA inside the Bronco along with the blood of O.J. Simpson and both victims. The defense believes that a cop used the bloody glove to smear evidence inside the Bronco.
The combined testimony suggests very persuasively that one of the detectives was inside that Bronco on the morning of the 13th.
The defense has invested a lot of court time trying to show the jury that Mark Furman had a motive to frame O.J. Simpson, that Dennis Fung and Andrea Mazzola cross-contaminated evidence at the LAPD crime lab, and all of that led to DNA results that unfairly identify Simpson as the killer. At this moment, the defense hasn't actually named Mark Furman as the man they believe committed the frame-up, but they are getting close. Jack?
John, a lot of developments recently in the case. You mentioned Mark Furman. He recently filed suit over these accusations that he's a racist and, in fact, had planted evidence. Does that worry the defense at all?
These lawyers aren't going to back off because of a lawsuit, but it is true. Mark Furman has a $50 million suit against the New Yorker, and last week he named Robert Shapiro as another defendant, so he is willing to use the courts and put the defense lawyers on the defense.
All right, John Gibson from Burbank. Thank you, John.
All right.
In other news today, health workers are using an unusual weapon in their fight against the deadly Ebola virus in Kikwit, Zaire, the center of the outbreak of that virus. They're using megaphones as they attempt to warn the public against spreading of the infection. They also plan to give away pamphlets about the infections. Dozens have died from this painful affliction. Several new cases are being reported this morning. And the sailing community in the United States is sad this morning. That's because New Zealand's Black Magic 1 has won the America's Cup. The crew defeated Dennis Conner and his boat Young America, sparking a huge celebration. Speculation is New Zealand, that celebration could last until the next race, which is in the year 2000. Now, Dennis Connors has won 4 times, but he's the only American skipper to lose. That's the news this Mother's Day morning, and now here's Joe Whitty with the Mother's Day weather.
Today's weather is brought to you by Visa.
We've got a little serious weather to talk about, too. Take a look at the weather radar, and you see we've got some strong thunderstorms moving across the midsection of the country into the Ohio Valley. In fact, we have tornado watches posted this hour until 11 o'clock this morning. Keep a weather eye here all the way from Memphis to Pittsburgh, and keep an eye on your local forecast during the course of the day. Stormy weather for the east. We'll have some stormy weather for California, midsection of the country. Beautiful, bright sunshine, and pretty mild, too, in parts of the southeast. That's a quick look at the national weather. It is now 5 after the hour right here on Today. We're going to find ourselves with Denver going up to 64 degrees, 73 in Chicago, 92 degrees in Miami, nice and warm. Boston going up to 63 degrees. Seattle, 76, wet in San Francisco with a high of 60. And for our viewers watching live on Super Channel in 30 countries, in the 57 degrees, that's 14 degrees Celsius. And that wraps up the weather across the country and Europe. Hey, we've got a little friend here. Zach, how are you? Do you want to say Happy Mother's Day? Yeah, oh, what a smile you got. Giselle, this is enough to die for right here.
I am telling you, he's a Gerber baby to be sure. What a doll. That makes you happy. Thanks so much, Joe. All right, in sports this morning, NBA playoff action today has Phoenix at Houston, San Antonio at Los Angeles, and Orlando at Chicago. In the NHL, Detroit is at Dallas, the Rangers at Quebec, Buffalo, and Philadelphia.
Bombs and politics. On the occasion of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, today President Clinton joined former President George Bush in bashing the National Rifle Association.
And President Clinton warned the gun lobbyists that it is wrong to compare the raid on Waco 2 years ago with the bombing in Oklahoma City last month. Steve Handelsman reports tonight the occasion was an event honoring the nation's fallen police officers.
In the big crowd of cops near the Capitol today, Los Angeles County Safety Police Officer Mike Mosca, whose fellow officer Tom Worley was killed in a robbery last December. That's Worley's son in Mosca's arms. 155 police were killed in the line of duty last year. To honor them and all sworn officers today, President Clinton attacked their critics.
No one has the right to run them down or to suggest that somehow it is all right for them to be put in harm's way. That is not the American way, and anybody who does it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
That's a slam at the National Rifle Association. Clinton is siding with George Bush, who quit the NRA last week. In full-page newspaper ads today, the gun lobby begs Bush to reconsider. An NRA-bashing frenzy today grips the national media, says the letter. But again, the NRA calls federal officers black-suited, masked, massively armed mobs of screaming, swearing agents invading the homes of innocents. That's what made Bush mad in the first place. He turned up the heat to back federal agents yesterday.
And I think we all ought to speak up against the excesses of these crazy people who put them in a bad light and refer to them as Nazis and refer to them as jackbooted thugs.
The NRA is demanding a new investigation of the FBI and ATF at Waco. But in the wake of Oklahoma City, the president warned today we can't wait to settle Waco before giving federal agents more power to fight domestic terror.
This plays into the hands of those who would blame the law enforcement officers who keep the law rather than the criminals who break it.
Meantime, here in Sioux Falls today, police officers received a tribute in the form of a blue ribbon. In recognition of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, the local Fraternal Order of Police Auxiliary tied blue ribbons on the antenna of police cars. The ribbons are to serve as a reminder for those who died in the line of duty and those who risk their lives daily.
They're the people who keep our community safe, and it's really easy to kind of forget about them and forget the job they do, and they put their life on the line every day that they go to work.
The auxiliary asked the public to show support by driving with headlights on tomorrow.
Bud Sonic, the postmaster in Pierre, is suspended from his job during an investigation by federal authorities of possible mail fraud. Sonic's son, Barry, recently agreed to give up his real estate license in Wyoming after admitting he sent in his license renewal application after the deadline of December 30th. The elder Sonic is not commenting about whether the late license application by his son has anything to do with the investigation of his duties as Pierre postmaster. And searchers near Harney Peak today finally got a break in the hunt for a missing boy. They found footprints this morning near a cabin that had been broken into. Custer County Sheriff Jim Daggett says dogs are now on the scene, along with about 100 volunteers from as far away as Howard, looking for 12-year-old Leroy DeGrand. The boy disappeared Friday while on an outing with his school. The boy wore jeans, a T-shirt, and possibly a sweatshirt.
10 cars of a freight train left the tracks last night in Hinton, Iowa. The train carried butadiene and flammable liquids. The fire department evacuated 10 homes near the derailment and rerouted traffic along Highway US 75 during the cleanup effort. The 150 people moved out were allowed back into their homes by late this afternoon. Maureen Kennedy, the Clinton administration's director of rural housing assistance, said today that unless the U.S. Senate holds its ground, South Dakota stands to lose $4 million in projects scheduled to begin this year. During a news conference in Sioux Falls today, Kennedy said proposed multi-housing units in Vermilion, Flandreau, Hot Springs, and Custer will be canceled if the Senate decides to go along with the proposed House plan. The apartments have been approved for this year until the House rejected the administration's 10% hike in rural housing assistance, choosing to eliminate the low-interest loans program altogether.
Used by communities across the country. That rescission package hit rural America very, very hard, and that's something that I have a real problem stomaching personally, particularly because on the House side, a lot of those cuts are going to be translated directly into tax breaks for higher income families.
Kennedy says the former FMHA office currently has $250 million worth of loans outstanding in South Dakota. The Republican House plan to cut back would leave single-family home lending intact.
In a moment, a request for a presidential disaster declaration.
And some advice on managing the crop this year, next on News 5.
Amigos, at Chi-Chi's.
And today, and Judge Lance Ito was back on the warpath.
This came during the defense's attempt to discredit DNA testing as proving O.J. Simpson killed his former wife and a friend of hers. John Gibson has the story.
Sidney Simpson at her dance recital the day of the murders. Later, in the early morning hours of June 13th, she called her mother from the police station wanting to know why she and her brother were taken away and what was going on. "Mommy," she pleaded into the phone, "please call me back. I want to know what happened last night." She repeated 3 times, "Mommy, please answer." And finally she said, "Bye." In court, Sidney's father is listening as his lawyers try to blunt the DNA proof that he is the killer of Nicole Simpson. Judge Ito lost his temper, frightening the DNA witness, Dr. Robin Cotton.
You're right. You're right. Okay, I guess we have all possible.
Wait! First of all, you can't talk at the same time. Secondly, when I say wait, everybody stops, including you, Dr. Cotton.
Even with a testy judge, Peter Neufeld is managing to make his point with Dr. Cotton that Cellmark Laboratory has in the past made just the kind of error that Simpson's lawyers say occurred here.
And you got another false positive in this next batch, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Now, this again was caused by DNA from one sample cross-contaminating a second sample, was it not?
That's right.
The Simpson defense has now put before the jury the simple theory that O.J. Simpson is identified as the killer because in the laboratory his own blood sample contaminated the blood evidence from the crime scene.
This is Historic Preservation Week, and the Sioux Falls Board of Preservation decided to mark that occasion by marking the first bridge to span the Big Sioux River in Sioux Falls. The board today unveiled a bronze historic marker on the 8th Street Bridge. The reinforced concrete and earthen cord bridge was an important engineering feat when built 120 years ago.
You are standing on the site of where it was constructed in 1876. And the Board of Preservation has been adding plaques throughout the city, as has the Minnehaha County Historical Society, just to heighten the interest of the historical background of Sioux Falls.
Due to quality restoration over the years, the Board of Preservation believes the 8th Street Bridge will be around for many more years to come.
The teepee is a symbol of the Native American culture that has been around for 10,000 years or so. And there is a new teepee in Sioux Falls, built to show those unfamiliar with the meaning of the simple structure, a way of life that is as spiritual as it is practical. Cammie Melton has the story.
It's the song sung by Native Americans before erecting every teepee, asking their loved ones to come back and fight the inner battle, to do good for themselves, their people, and others. It's a way of connecting their inner self and God before taking on the task of creating the universe. That's what a teepee symbolizes. The first pole is for the Creator, the next 2 in the bracing tripod stand for the physical and the spiritual.
I always like to start off with God because I always think He's the first thing I should always start off with. When I do that, I know things will be all right.
The next 28-foot pine poles with different colored flags are added, symbolizing the 4 basic races, God and Earth, followed with water, fire, land, and air, all of which must be stable so the teepee and the life it represents is balanced and anchored.
I really believe that, this is my heart. This is my chante that Lakota people say, And my heart's beautiful, and if I don't share it, it's going to be destroyed. You know, it's going to wilter and fade away, and I don't want that to happen.
And Chris stops only to pray for the strength to finish his home. Then a skin of material is wrapped around the teepee skeleton, bringing it all together and making it a safe place to live.
Now I have myself a small, little, beautiful home. May look kind of rough, but I like it.
After laboring for almost an hour, this spiritual and physical challenge has come to an end. Now he may bring things inside his heart, that will help him continue to do what's good for himself, his people, and others.
Everything that I have here is the things inside of me, things that are special to me. And once I give it up, I'll take those things in there proudly and dignifiedly with honor and respect, and I'll put them in there, and I'll sit there and I'll say, this is my home. This is where my heart is.
In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
Governor Janklow today asked President Clinton to declare a major disaster for South Dakota because of the spring flooding. The governor says that damages to public facilities so far will be more than $9.3 million, and the governor notes the flooding damage affects almost 2/3 of the state, and that this year's devastation is as much as for the entire damage to infrastructure in the flood of 1993.
Well, the sun did come out again today for the second day in a row, and the wind picked up, which tends to dry the farm fields out a little faster. But already farmers are way behind in getting their crops into the ground. As John Austin reports tonight, that means intelligent management this year will be even more important than usual.
If this week's forecast can be carried forth for the next several, South Dakota farmers should still have plenty of time to get soybeans and corn in the field. Many will be switching to shorter-term seed than they have in normal years, but extension specialists warn that in their rush to get a crop planted, farmers shouldn't overlook factors like weed control, possible carryover problems in fields previously slated for small grain, and other available marketing options.
There are some creditors that are now being a little more cautious in extending credit for any kind of spring work.
At a news conference in Sioux Falls today, extension specialists from South Dakota State University said mistakes in any aspect of a farm's operation could be devastating. Burton Pfluger warned producers about operating under the pressure of an ugly 1995 start.
Back into the field, they will be there for long hours, and we need to be concerned with some of the safety issues as well as then some of the relationships back with the family.
We have a good news, bad news scenario when we deal with these things.
Marketing specialist Dick Shane said in spite of inevitably smaller overall crops, farmers could cash in by playing the options and futures market early on, cashing in on a prematurely pessimistic overall forecast.
When we have this overreaction, the prices tend to go a little bit higher than what they'll probably be able to maintain when the planting actually does occur later on and when other crops are planted. And so one needs to take advantage of that overreaction by using appropriate marketing alternatives.
The experts also warned against producers getting what crop they can in the ground and giving up, satisfied with whatever the result.
In years like this, the soil fertility, the weed control, those kind of things will probably have a greater impact on finally whatever that production level is than it might be in a normal year. Actually, you could shortcut things in a normal situation that cannot be shortcut under these conditions.
In Sioux Falls, John Austin, News 5.
But no matter what you were doing today, the chances are there was one main thing on your mind, the sunshine. And for many of us, that made it tougher to get into the cars and head to work. But as Scott Bowden reports tonight, today's sunshine made it possible for some college students preparing for final exams to get outdoors and relieve some of that stress.
As the sun came out for the second day in a row today, some students at Augustana College decided to take a break from their studies and head outdoors to take advantage of the nice weather.
Well, my initial reaction was, this is going to be a great day. You know, whenever we have a chance for the sun to come out, we come out here, play volleyball. Yep. Show up, you know, both of us are originally from California, so, you know, this is pretty much a daily thing for us out there. And when it happens out here, we're on it.
Oh, I love the sun. I try to get as much as I can.
Why is that?
I like to tan. Summertime. Nothing better to do.
Others decided to do both.
I heard it was going to be 75 degrees, and I was like, I don't think it's going to happen, but turns out it did, so yeah, you're right. You might as well get two things in at once. Get some sun, too, so.
But for those students who did leave their textbooks behind, they say they haven't forgotten about their finals. It's just today's one day they could never miss.
I'm not too worried about my finals.
Why not?
They're all 3 comprehensive and they're nursing, and I guess they're all multiple choice, so I'll just guess good.
Tomorrow's reading day, so we got all day tomorrow to study, so I just thought, come out today and play.
How can you pass up a day like this, you know? You gotta jump on these days. And you can.
In Sioux Falls, Scott Bowden, News 5.
Well, with any kind of luck, it's not going to be that rare in the future, huh?
Well, that's true. Looks like we have one more day of that similar weather like today, tomorrow, Ben. And then after that, it does go down a little bit. We'll tell you about that and plus show you Cook's weather pick after this.
And the always charming supermodel Kathy Ireland. Plus comedian Bill Maher and Fabio's love surprise. Followed by an all-new Late Night with Conan, NBC tonight.
62, again, this is a black and white photo, and that is the Fenn's ice cream truck. This truck was picked up by a tornado 12 miles north of Mitchell, tossed around 5 times, and yes, Rex was driving this truck, and he was in it at the time, and he survived it, a couple of bruises and about 17 stitches, but there's some of the damage that tornadoes can do to actually steal vehicles. Current conditions in Sioux Falls, we are looking at skies that are clear, 69 degrees, dew point now at 53 degrees. We will only fall to an overnight low of 57, southeast winds at 15, and our pressure, it is steady, but it is low, 29.67. Anytime you lower the pressure, of course, you know there is some kind of weather system affecting our forecast. Sioux Falls, 79, and it's been 8 months since we've seen 79 in Sioux Falls. That was on September 20th of last fall. 73 in Minneapolis today, 74 in Fargo, and 79 also for a daytime high in Bismarck with plenty of sunshine to go around. Last night we saw 41 in Sioux Falls, and tonight much warmer, only a low near 57 degrees with mild southerly breezes continuing to blow, kind of helping to mix the air up, and that will help to keep low temperatures on the mild side. But we are watching some scattered storms now developing across northeast South Dakota. Right around Millbank, there's an isolated storm just developing. That will move northeast around 15 to 25 miles per hour, but we'll have to keep our eyes on these storms just moving into south central South Dakota. They may develop a band of showers and storms just in a line across the state, and that may cross us later on tonight into tomorrow morning, but really the chances of precip are only around 30%. Looking at the cloud cover across the area, it looks pretty good. The sky started out plenty of sunshine, just a few high clouds. Then they broke up across Nebraska, just a few filtering clouds. And this evening has been mostly clear, but we are watching clouds.
Rob and Sally and Buddy shake hands, then the episode title comes up, obscuring Richie, and notice Rob shakes hands with Buddy again. And that's it.
Of the building by implosion. Today, the company began placing more than 200 sticks of dynamite in certain vital places in the structure so the building will collapse on itself with the timed blasts. After the demolition next Tuesday, rescue workers will then be able to dig through rubble finally and locate the bodies of 2 women still missing after that blast last month that killed 167. The company began placing more than 200 sticks of dynamite in certain vital places in the structure so the building will collapse on itself with the timed blasts. After the demolition next Tuesday, rescue workers will then be able to dig through rubble finally and locate the bodies of 2 women still missing after that blast last month that killed 167.
In the O.J. Simpson double murder trial today, the defense began cross-examination of a second expert in the science of DNA. As John Gibson reports, this particular expert brought to court the most damaging evidence against O.J. Simpson so far, that he killed his ex-wife and a friend of hers last summer.
That's what.
You can't argue with science, but O.J. Simpson's lawyers are giving it $1 million shot.
Are you aware of making a mistake in any of your forensic DNA typing cases to this point?
No, I'm not aware that I've made a mistake in any of my cases.
Right.
Simpson DNA expert Barry Scheck is trying to show that cross-contamination in the laboratory accounts for the results so damaging to O.J. Simpson. For instance, when lab criminalist Gary Sims handled evidence, did he change gloves?
I don't believe I change my gloves after every item. What I do sometimes would be usually to wash my gloves.
But in earlier testimony, prosecutor Rock Harmon tried to head off this argument by asking questions that ridicule the cross-contamination theory.
Does the DNA of an athletic person that's in a stain have any athletic prowess more than a dead person?
I'm curious to disregard the tenor of that question.
This is the fulcrum point of the prosecution case, and both sides are getting testy with each other, leading the judge to sharp words.
Objection. Wait.
I'm discussing this with counsel. I'm trying to give him some guidance. Why don't you sit down?
It wasn't just the lawyers getting a scolding. Judge Ito today tossed 2 reporters from the courtroom. Not a simple one-day suspension, but a permanent ban.
Those 2 reporters were from Court TV and USA Today. They were kicked out after a juror wrote the judge a note that said their talking was distracting.
In a moment, a 100-year-old building in Sioux Falls gets a fresh start for another century of service.
And before you get out on the lake, there are some tougher rules for safety enforced this year. The story is coming up on News 5.
With the caution flag, the Memorial Day 300 continues at...
100 years ago today, the Sioux quartzite structure has seen 2 additions in its century of use, including an extra floor. Today, to mark the turning point, the building showed itself off and showed some new citizens the red carpet into America. Cammie Melton reports.
Recommends that they be admitted to citizenship upon taking the oath of allegiance as required by the law.
More than 50 people from 27 different countries became U.S. citizens today here at the Sioux Falls Federal Courthouse.
This means a lot because my children are American, my husband is American, so I am joining them in the same nationality.
I'm now a citizen. I've been here for so long, and yeah, I just couldn't wait until I was 18 to do this.
But the rights, advantages, and obligations that go along with being an American had to be earned. Everyone had to pass a U.S. history test. As the naturalization ceremony came to an end, the courthouse centennial celebration began at the other end of the building with tours of the historic site. Mary Jean Elliott Skinner came back to learn more about her grandfather's role in the courthouse's history.
I remember as a child, I was 11 when he died, and I remember coming prior to that to visit the courthouse and see the courtroom. And I believe, I have a memory at least, that his picture had already been hung at that time in the courtroom. And it's still there.
It was also a day for Tammy Wilka's daughter, Katie, to learn a bit more about the history of this building and the history created in it every day.
I used to clerk in this building a couple of years ago for Judge Jones, and so I knew about all of the activities, and I wanted to bring my daughter to see the naturalization ceremony.
Making it a day of history for both the new and the lifelong citizens of this country. In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
With the return of sunshine to South Dakota, many boaters are itching for a return to the water. But this year, there are some new requirements added to boating for safety. Before, boats under 16 feet in length did not have to have life jackets for every passenger. This year, they do. And as John Austin reports, violators could face a $50 fine for every life jacket they do not have, or worse.
South Dakota boaters spent a fatality-free summer in 1994, but a look at the record offers a strong endorsement to this year's Coast Guard requirement that all boats be equipped with an approved personal flotation device for every passenger on board. Smaller boats with life jackets not aboard or not on were blamed for even more tragedy here than the national average, where 85% of all boating fatalities were not wearing an approved flotation device.
We know from our fatality statistics that of the 800 people who die in boating accidents, some 600 are dying of wet lung drowning. In many cases, nearly all, they are not wearing life jackets. Our goal is to get people to wear those PFDs and prevent those preventable fatalities.
During the summers of 1991, 92, and 93, all 9 of South Dakota's boating fatalities were not wearing a life jacket, and 8 of them in crafts where the PFD was not required, in boats of 10, 13, and 14 feet in length. The National Boating Safety Council will kick off its annual push next week with the common sense message that life jackets don't work if they're not worn.
Today's life jackets come in so many different colors and shapes and sizes that they're much more comfortable than they ever have been in the past. Slipping one on yourself, and especially on your child, should be as automatic as putting on a seatbelt in a car.
And just like the frequency of accidents in shorter neighborhood trips far exceeding longer drives where the seatbelt is more commonly remembered, most boating fatalities occur on nice days in calm water with very little common sense. John Austin, News 5.
Well, Memorial Day is coming up, and with it, the traditional vacation travel season across America. After a long cold winter and a long wet spring, many people are ready for a getaway. But as Beth Fuller reports tonight, if you don't have your plans made already, you may be out of luck.
The American Automobile Association predicts more than 26 million motorists will hit the road Memorial Day weekend. And like past years, it will cost travelers more to get to their destination. Because as summertime demand for gas increases, so does the price. According to AAA of South Dakota, statewide a gallon of gas costs about $1.21 a gallon. That's slightly more than the national average of $1.20. Local retailers say factors other than Memorial Day force prices up.
I know Memorial Weekend for us is a huge weekend, so but we don't jump the prices unless we have no choice.
If your plans include a visit to one of the state parks, you better call now and make reservations. Many of them are already filled up, and here at the Palisades, they only have 4 spots left for Memorial Day weekend. But if your first choice campground is already booked, then the State Parks Department may be able to help you come up with a plan B.
If you call for Lewis and Clark and they don't have any sites left, the people at the reservation center can check another park and find you a place to camp, hopefully.
If weather cooperates, more than 100,000 people could fill state parks and campgrounds, making it the busiest Memorial Day weekend ever. At Palisades State Park, Beth Fuller, News 5.
About 20 people were hurt, 2 of them seriously today, when a tornado slashed through a busy mall near Nashville, Tennessee. As Cynthia Williams reports, the twister left a wide path of destruction in a very congested area.
Sheets of rain were blowing through, and the van rocked back and forth, and the windows just exploded.
Nashville's Rivergate Mall looked like a war zone. Store windows were disintegrated, roofs were blown off buildings, trees were toppled, and power lines blew down. The tornado hit around lunchtime, a time when the mall was packed with employees as well as customers.
And then I just told them to get back in because we got a tornado out here.
Most people were inside stores in the tornado's path and terrified.
I heard someone say, get to the back of the store, and I ran.
Can you copy what 46 said there?
Officials are amazed that more people weren't seriously injured or killed. They're totaling up the damage and counting their blessings.
Also in Tennessee, a tornado killed 3 people and injured at least 20 others in the town of Etheridge. And I have a feeling you're going to say those were not the only 2 tornadoes today.
Well, yeah, there's at least now coming in reports of at least 40 tornadoes alone in Tennessee. We'll tell you why all that severe weather is occurring, plus spell out our weather after this.
Has paid off.
There is no question that in this case, the large amount of bloodstains that were found at the crime scene, that was found at Rockingham, needed to be analyzed. And in this particular case, yes, we did do probably more work than any other case because of the nature of the crime scene involved, and also in our efforts to try to find any evidence to exclude the defendant. But as you've seen now in court in the last couple of weeks, on every sample that we tested, using every available test to us, it either matches the defendant or matches the victims, Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown.
Kahn is one of the prosecution's DNA specialists. And that wraps up this special program of highlights from day 73 of the O.J. Simpson trial. I'm Lyndon Souls. Thank you for watching. Criminalist Gary Sims from the California State Crime Lab is due back on the stand Friday for more cross-examination. CNN's live coverage begins at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
South Dakota, could this happen here?
This is a monastery, all black robes and silence.
To steal the South Dakota National Guard's one and only tank won't get very far. There's no transmission inside this Russian-made Iraqi tank captured during the Persian Gulf War. Unlike the San Diego tank hijacker, a thief inside Camp Rapid is likely to be stopped cold in his tracks.
I think everybody has seen the news, has watched this thing, and so everybody's more aware. But we're fairly comfortable that our security is where it should be.
National Guard equipment is stored at 30 South Dakota communities. Vehicles parked outdoors are fenced in under heavy lockup. Even the steering columns are chained and padlocked.
You'd need a big set of bolt cutters to get in to operate any of this.
The equipment is sophisticated enough that unless you know how to operate it, you probably can't get it going.
The spoils of war on display at Camp Rapid might make tempting targets for thieves. but the firing mechanisms have all been welded shut, rendering the big guns useless in the wrong hands. In Rapid City, Perry Groton, KELO-TV News at 10.
A Guard spokesman says there are other security measures, too, for its equipment, ones it obviously doesn't want to advertise. The Guard generally doesn't go public with security at all, but decided to do so in this case to make people feel more at ease.
Guests at a Rapid City Holiday Inn had to leave their rooms when fire broke out. The east wing of La Crosse Street Holiday Inn, that's the one right off of I-90, was evacuated when fire gutted one room and smoked up a dozen others. No one's hurt. The cause is still under investigation. This is all that's left of a gas truck and two 10,000-gallon gasoline tanks in Warner, South Dakota. They went up in a ball of flames this morning.
It rocked my house a little bit, shook the house. It was a big explosion, and it was smoke and stuff pretty high. It was a lot of gas that was burning.
Truck driver Daryl Somke suffered burns in the fire, but they're not life-threatening.
It looked kind of shaky for a little while earlier this evening, but our weather has turned out to be a case of more smoke than fire. This evening's clouds are temporary and moving out, right, Lexi?
You're exactly right. This is typical of summer-type thunderstorm activity. And let's take a look at what's left on radar at this hour. Still some showers as you head down into Lincoln and Union County, moving off to the southeast at 15 miles per hour. Also some to the west. The most rain we've received has been in Custer, where it's been just about a half an inch. Otherwise, trace amounts across the region. Precipitation chances tomorrow will be confined to the west, maybe nudging into the central sections, but the east is looking dry with temperatures in the 60s in the east, 50s in the west. So, Steve, that is a cooler day than this afternoon, but the air is dry, so we'll take it.
Okay, thanks, Lexi.
Sure.
In one way or another, a lot of Mother Nature is still being fought around the country. A 5-year-old is among 3 people missing in this rock slide near Wenatchee, Washington. For some reason, a rock wall collapsed, sending boulders as big as 10 feet across, cascading onto traffic below. Rescuers are hopeful that there are survivors. Other parts of the country, like Maryland, are recovering from tornadoes. On the other hand, it's finally stopped raining in St. Louis, but the sandbagging goes on till the water goes down.
Well, our nice weather should give a boost to a couple of cultural events this weekend. In Hendricks, Minnesota, Norwegians are celebrating Sitten de Mai, a couple of days late, but in full force. It's tulip time in Orange City, Iowa, but it's more than just flowers, with traditional Dutch songs and many other activities. And this is a good weekend ahead for your nearest state park. Except for camping, admission is free all weekend. You can even fish for nothing.
As the National Rifle Association convention gets underway in Arizona, President Clinton is firing another shot.
Made the money by attacking the police. They admitted they did the wrong thing. They ought to give the money up.
The president is suggesting that donations from a controversial fundraising letter in which the NRA describes federal agents as jackbooted thugs be turned over to a fund for families of slain police officers. Not everyone with the NRA agrees with these latest tactics. A third of NRA members say that the leadership is out of touch.
Here in Sioux Falls, an alleged burglar picked the wrong house this morning. 37-year-old Harold Kilborn is accused of breaking into a home north of Renner. His mistake was threatening the couple who lived there with a rifle he found in their closet.
The homeowner knew it wasn't loaded at that point, and the homeowner basically took things into his own hands at that point and subdued the subject. He did sustain enough injuries that he was taken to the hospital.
Kilborn has a broken nose. He was already awaiting sentencing for burglary and grand theft.
With a school board seat dangling in the balance, teachers at Sioux Falls Lincoln High School are feuding. One teacher, Al Burkhalter, is the head of Citizens Accepting Responsibility for Education, CARE for short. Its goal is to bring education back to the basics, but many teachers disagree with CARE's philosophy. KELO-TV's Madeline Shields reports.
Al Burkhalter is a computer science and math teacher at Lincoln High School. He's been teaching for 27 years. Burkhalter says the Sioux Falls School Board and the Teachers Union spend too much money and are too liberal.
I believe that homosexuality should not be an accepted alternative lifestyle. I think it's a chosen lifestyle. I think that it should not be accepted and tolerated in our schools and taught. The union believes that it should.
As our camera visited Burkhalter's classroom, we found this poster on the wall.
This is information on abortion.
Why is that in a public classroom? Should it be there?
Why shouldn't it? I mean,
it's a computer science class.
Should we censor it? I think we should censor it.
So beyond just describing this particular toy, I want you to...
Teachers like Bev Harvey disagree with Burkhalter and the message he is sending to the public. Harvey says Burkhalter is telling taxpayers that courses are being taught that aren't being taught.
That we have a homosexual curriculum, to condom distribution, to X-rated movies. He implies that these things are, right here in Sioux Falls when they are not. And
Harvey and other teachers go to the CARE meetings to get information, not as participants.
so far, all those things that he has been against, I have not seen evidence of in this district.
2 points of view, both claiming to have the students' best interest in mind. Madeline Shields, KELO-Land News at 10.
Sioux Falls officials don't know if Burkhalter's anti-abortion poster is legal. CARE hopes to get the swing vote on the school board. It's endorsing Laura Hubble among the field of 4 candidates in the June 20th election.
Saying it's not even a serious vote, even South Dakota Senator Tom Daschle has voted against President Clinton's budget and went down 99-0 in the Senate, setting the stage for a real fight later on. And a couple of grim reminders tonight. It was a month ago today that the Oklahoma Federal Building was bombed. This tree is being planted in the memory of the 7 Agriculture Department workers who died. While the defense lawyers try to cast doubt on police handling of the O.J. Simpson investigation, this would have been Nicole Simpson's 36th birthday. Her daughter, Arnell, visited with Simpson's friend, A.C. Cowlings. Clinton Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros is settling up with his former mistress. He's paying her $49,000. She's accused him of going back on an agreement to pay her $4,000 a month. And there is a real-life Doogie Howser tonight. Meet 17-year-old Bala Ambadi, who's just graduated from a New York medical school. He's 17 and the youngest doctor in the world.
That record may stand for a while, too.
I think so.
Right-of-way hunting is a hot issue in South Dakota. Let's check in with Lee, who has a court ruling to tell us about.
Yes, Steve, right-of-way or road hunting remains legal in our state. A group of landowners filed a lawsuit saying state easements on section lines were for travel only, not hunting. Well, Circuit Judge Steve Zinter does not agree, and today, after a short trial, he denied the lawsuit. Deputy Attorney General Larry Long says he would be surprised if the decision is not appealed. So road hunting remains legal, no change in the law.
Well, I bet we haven't heard the last of that one, though.
I don't think so.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Here's one I just can't believe.
No, it's hard to believe. A face only a mother could love? Well, mothers may love some faces more than others. A new study finds that mothers treat cute babies nicer than they do homely babies. The study says mothers of cute newborns are more likely to pay more attention to them. I think we need another study.
Yeah, but there's a flaw there. Has there ever been a newborn who wasn't cute?
Yeah, and it's beauty in the eye of the beholder, right?
Mother.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one. Again, our top stories tonight. We have one disabled National Guard tank, but a lot of working equipment around South Dakota, but Guard officials say they are secure and nobody will be driving off in them like the incident in California. A dozen rooms have been damaged by a fire at the Holiday Inn along I-90 in Rapid City. Nobody's hurt. A trucker is the only person hurt in this explosion of a truck and 2 gasoline tanks in Warner near Aberdeen. Lexi may have some minor disturbances in our forecast. Our weather is next.
Ben, what's it like to live in a monastery?
When people come here, they find a different world.
Tonight on Eye on KELO-Land, we'll show you how you can visit one.
It's another one of our one-tank trips right here in South Dakota.
Years ago. The State Crime Lab relied on 2 tests to say that the ABO typing test and polymorphic enzyme screening. The state maintains that was more than enough to convict.
I think that Mr. Davi was convicted because of the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. That evidence came from people that knew him and his wife, saw how he was, how this course of domestic violence escalated, became worse, became more threatening, became more violent.
But now an independent laboratory has retested the semen samples from the crime. Though the tests are not yet public, reportedly they may rule out Scott Davi completely as the source of the semen using the much more restrictive DNA identification method.
They are not too sure he can even be a donor of it.
The purpose of the pretrial discovery is, again, before you make a conclusion, is to look very carefully at the results that had been completed, or the results that came out and the testing procedures that were used previously.
Scott Davi was back in court today, his attorney asking for copies of the original notes and photos from the State Crime Lab tests.
Hoping will show I didn't commit this.
Prosecutor Dave Nelson does not want to hand over the notes and photos.
Well, all of the information that has been sought by this petition has previously been turned over to one of the defendant's previous lawyers. He had an opportunity to examine it, had an opportunity to visit with our expert, Mr. Reese, on a couple of occasions, both over the telephone and in person. Had an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Reese at trial and had every opportunity to get all of the evidence before the jury that they needed to decide this defendant's guilt.
Today's hearing was inconclusive. A foul-up at the Minnehaha County Courthouse meant that the court could not locate a necessary notice of petition as ever having been filed. Well, later in the afternoon, the court clerks found the mislaid petition. Presumably, presiding Circuit Court Judge Jean Paul Keene will now get a date, set a date to hear the petition for those state crime lab notes and photos.
In other news tonight, it's been more than 100 years since the Indian and cavalry battle that came to be known as Custer's Last Stand. And still, historians argue over what really happened there. But as John Miller reports tonight, the National Park Service is back at the Custer battle site at the Little Bighorn, armed with technology to try and find out.
More than 200 cavalrymen died at Custer's Last Stand. Their identities and the answer to how it all happened are buried here beneath the battlefield at Little Bighorn. But historians and scientists are most puzzled by what happened here at a section of battlefield called Deep Ravine.
Immediately after the fight, 3 days afterwards, burial parties discovered the bodies of about 28 7th Cavalrymen in the bottom of this ravine. But they haven't been seen since that day.
They'd like to unearth some answers without digging up an historical landmark.
And that's what we're trying to do here is scan an area that may contain the remains.
It looks sort of like a wheelbarrow, but this surveying device can do a whole lot more than move dirt. It can look 6 feet beneath it. Designed to locate buried waste material, scientists hope it can also find buttons or bullets or pocket knives and help them learn more about the U.S. cavalry soldiers.
We're finding many of them have back problems at 22 years of age. They have bad teeth, broken bones that have healed, stomped feet from being around horses.
Now they're hoping these machines will provide more images, solving the mystery of what happened to those last 28 soldiers at Custer's Last Stand, digging deep into a hazy piece of American history without leaving a scratch.
By the way, even if human remains are found, they likely will not be dug up.
A weekend getaway to Lake Francis Case is not such a good idea this week. The Game, Fish, and Parks Department says the lake is at its highest level ever, about 12 feet above normal summer elevation. That means some state and federal parks and many boat ramps along the reservoir are closed. The water is being held back in the reservoir to keep from making flooding along the Missouri River downstream worse than it already is.
Who says that nothing is free anymore? South Dakota State Parks are hosting a free open house for the weekend, not only to let people know what they have, but to show off some new features. As Ted Copy reports, this is a marketing strategy for the future.
It's one of the first truly nice weekends to get outside in South Dakota, and for state park lovers, it couldn't come at a better time. For the next 2 days, the state has dropped the $2 per person entry fee in the name of advertising. Open House Weekend includes free admission to state parks and free fishing. It's the state's way of welcoming visitors back and hopefully attracting some new ones.
What we really hope happens is they decide to come back again and start becoming a park user.
And for those park users, this year, the state has implemented a new centralized reservation system. Campers wishing to reserve a spot simply call an 800 number now, rather than the individual park. The state parks then get the reservations over this computer. In the past, reservations cost $6. Now, they're free, but you have to pay for the camping spot when you make the reservation. Park officials say that's to cut down on the number of no-shows, and one other reason.
Our parks have become so busy over the last few years. Our visitations have grown and grown. And some of the parks, their office staff just could not handle all the calls coming in.
Bottom line, Stick says, they want to better serve people who come here to get away. At Palisades State Park, Ted Copy, News 5.
And South Dakota State Parks are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. Well, if you don't want to ride in the boat this summer, maybe you'll want to ride behind the boat on water skis. Well, Beth Fuller never did that until today, and as she reports from Catfish Bay north of Sioux Falls, she had some professional coaching when she took the plunge.
You see the pros and maybe even your friends flying across the water, and it looks so effortless and like so much fun. So for those who've always dreamed of riding the waves, Catfish Bay Water Ski Park offers lessons, even for beginners. I've never touched a water ski before, so Jim Bruns and Bob Euchre from the Sioux Falls Water Ski Club started my lesson on land, so I could get a feel for the tug of the rope.
The boat will pull you, and you basically, it'll kind of stand you right up. What you want to do is try and pull that handle into your hips, and don't let it pull you forward. You want to keep your knees bent.
That's not supposed to happen. Keeping legs slightly bent and arms straight are key, but most important is working with the boat.
This will be easy. No problem.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's go.
The first thing I learned today is every skier has his or her own tips, and reminders from coworkers were causing anxiety as we headed for the water.
All right, these boots aren't tight, right? Because Ted told me that if my boots are tight, my legs are going to get shredded.
My first time out was a little overwhelming. Actually, so were the following 5 attempts. On my 6th try, I caught a glimpse of success.
Sometimes victory is sweet, but short.
The next time, everything clicked, and I skied around a lake twice, which is the whole idea.
Doesn't matter if you're a junior or an adult. It's, lessons available for everybody. There are private lessons. There are group lessons.
So you too can experience the thrill, the anxiety, and the agony that comes with water skiing. Near Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
If you are interested in learning how to ski, Catfish Bay will be offering.
And he, of course, told his wife to run get the camera, and she did not volunteer to do that. Instead, he had to go get it and got this great shot. We thank him for sending that in, and we remind you, of course, please, if you are caught outside with a tornado, head to the ditch or find a culvert for safety. Currently in Sioux Falls, no severe weather in our forecast, just very nice weather conditions. Clear and 59 right now, dew point at 53, and west winds are now blowing at 10 miles per hour. And our pressure continues to rise now. Cold front has moved through, and it is at 29.93. And we are finding temps generally still in the upper 50s to lower 60s. 61 right now in Brookings and Worthington, also Minneapolis. 54 in Aberdeen, and the winds are gusting northwest at 24, as high as 30 miles per hour. And some of those breezes may come down to Sioux Falls. Earlier I thought we'd see some light winds, but there's some...
It started off to be a pretty nice day, but I kind of got that Louisiana humidity downpour and got pretty nasty pretty fast.
A collision up ahead forced the traffic to stop suddenly on the wet road. Robert Fordham had been thrown through the truck's windshield and over the side on impact. Now he was drowning, 40 feet below the bridge.
There were people running around, you know what I'm saying? There's a guy in the water, there's a guy in the water.
Fred LaLue-Mondier rushed to the rail from his U-Haul, and Bill Kessler from the Winnebago.
People started screaming, get a rope or some kind of a chain or something, and I was like, he couldn't even keep himself above water, so I knew a rope, he wasn't going to be able to hold onto a rope.
We just kind of looked at each other, and we knew we were going in, but I asked him, I said, are you going to go in? And he said, yeah, I'll go in.
I was really worried because it was scary. All I could see was some stumps sticking up, and I really didn't know what I was jumping into.
There's also alligators and snakes and nutria down there, which are like big rats.
And we just kind of looked at each other and just jumped.
Where'd it go?
He flailed just a little bit, and I said, we're here to help you. And he just totally relaxed.
We were kind of looking around because we didn't know exactly where to go at the time because we didn't know anything about the area. And Bill pointed out that there was a bank. He said, well, let's take him over there.
Okay, you got an accident on, just as you get up on the bridge going to Lafayette on 10.
A call came into the Louisiana State Police at 1:45 p.m.
And you got a van load of kids. And you got some out on the side of the highway. They're injured.
And your name?
Wayne Elliott.
All right, thanks, Wayne.
You're welcome.
All right.
Mark Green had taken his small boat out in the swamp to go fishing with his son Bo and his nephew Jason.
We saw the cars on the interstate starting to back up a little bit, so
Jason said, well, let's go down and see what happened.
You could tell he was hurt because he kept gasping, and then I kind of looked down, and he had his eyes wide open, and I couldn't see him breathing, and it scared me. I thought, oh my God, and I said, Bill, is he dead? And then all of a sudden he kind of moved, and you could see his eyes moving.
30 seconds out. Be advised, possible patient in the water at that location.
A ground ambulance and an air ambulance helicopter arrived almost simultaneously, within 10 minutes of the call. Chuck Thompson was the first paramedic on the scene.
I knew that he really shouldn't be jumping off of this bridge into this swamp. In the murky water, just 4 or 5 inches deep, you could not see a stump. And it could be ungodly landing on top of a stump. I threw what's called a scoop stretcher down, and it's used for immobilizing someone who's been traumatized.
Robert Fordham needed immediate medical attention. It was paramedic Thompson's job to find a safe way to get to him quickly.
Bill, who's a med student, he said, well, let's not drag him up on a bank because we could, if he has a broken back or something, we could kill him.
Get him out of the water.
All ready?
There's alligators and snakes all through the swamp. That's an obstacle that you have to be aware of that can possibly be down in that area. It's not a place I would like to live in unless I was well armed and knew exactly where I was standing.
Thompson would have to transport the victim to the helicopter somehow. Without a winch, the chopper couldn't haul anyone back up onto the bridge.
When he started snapping back into reality a little bit, all he was saying was, thank you, thank you. We just basically told him to hang in there, and then we kind of just made small talk so we could see that he was conscious.
It's just a little old boat, and it pressed so far down the water, and we took off that we started taking a little bit of water. And here's tubes laying all over the place and bottles hanging up. And all of a sudden I realized that we didn't have very much stability and it might tip over with this guy. And I said, oh, shoot.
He was strapped to that backboard, and if that boat would have capsized, he wouldn't have had a chance.
The air ambulance was waiting at the nearest ground level place it could land, 2 miles back at the base of the bridge.
So at this point, I'm still hunting in the dark about what is wrong with my patient, other than trying to get fluids on board him to replenish him, to get his blood pressure up, trying to maintain oxygen, to keep him with enough oxygen in his system, and still trying to assess his level of consciousness to determine if there is, in fact, a head injury, which is also complicating his situation.
Your IB line's clear? You got it, Scott. Clear. I've got it from here. Go ahead and get it tucked in your bag. We're going to be at the trauma center in just a second. It'll be about 6 to 8 minutes.
Amazingly, after being thrown through a windshield and dropped 40 feet into a swamp, Robert Fordham had no injury more serious than a severely strained back. After 5 days, he was released from the hospital.
A lot of people, they don't care. They're worried about themselves. If you can't do it for somebody else, don't expect anybody else to help you, is the way I feel, because if somebody's really hurt that bad and they really need help, and if you turn your back on them, it's just like you almost killed them yourself.
That's really the true mark of a hero, is that you do it without thinking of your own safety. You do it instinctively. You don't stand there and cognitively make a decision. Let's see, now what is my risk involved here? They just did it. They looked at each other and they went over the edge.
One of the highway patrolmen had come up and said, did y'all look at what y'all did? Did y'all look at the bridge that y'all jumped off? And I said, well, I haven't had a chance yet. And so he took us over to the side, and then I really got to look, and I really got to think about what we did, and it really scared me. I mean, I had nightmares. After this happened, I had nightmares for a couple of weeks. Because I would wake up in the middle of the night kind of sweating, and, I could just going over it in my mind in a dream, and it really did. It scared me bad.
We walked up on the wreck, and there was an older woman who was a car back from where our camper was, and she said, I'm so proud of you boys. Your mothers are going to kill you.
A year later, trucker Robert Fordham has fully recovered from his injuries.
I just know I was a goner. The water was real murky, and I thought about gators or water moccasins might be in that swamp water down there. And I was saying, oh man, let me be Gator bait, Next thing I know, 2 guys came off the bridge like Bush Cassidy and Sundance Kid. If it wasn't for these 2 college students, brave young men, I wouldn't have been here today to tell you what happened.
The person has to be a really terrific person to do what those 2 guys did. They risked their own life to save my husband's life. If one day we meet, I'll give him the biggest kiss and hug in the world, but thank you.
Painful chapter in a tragic tale of terror came to a close. The Oklahoma City Federal Building is reduced to rubble. We'll have a live report.
And a man arrested 2 days after the attack is set to be released later today. We'll tell you why James Nichols soon will be a free man.
My opinion would be that there's certainly no indication that such contamination occurred.
The defense in the Simpson murder trial plays its conspiracy card again.
The Senate debates its version of tax relief for families. Is there a federal tax break in your future? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to CNN Morning News. I'm Brian Christie, sitting in this morning for Leon Harris.
And a good morning to you. I'm Donna Kelly. We're glad you could join us this morning. It took just seconds this morning to bring down the remains of the Murrah Federal Building and remove a symbol of terror and death from Oklahoma City. CNN's Gary Tuckman is at the scene, and he joins us with the latest this morning. Gary?
Well, Donna, part of Oklahoma City's tragic past is now buried. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building has been demolished. Shortly after 7 o'clock local time, 8 o'clock Eastern time, 150 pounds of TNT exploded inside the building. They call it an implosion or a controlled explosion. Within a matter of 8 seconds, this entire 9-story building was gone. It had disappeared. Part of the past of Oklahoma City was buried. For 17 years, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was a part of this city's skyline, and now it's completely gone. Just a pile of rubble where the building used to be. Psychologically, it was hard to gauge how the people in Oklahoma City would react to this. Hundreds of people were out in the streets today. Families of the victims who perished inside the building, people who were trapped inside the building, just curious Oklahomans who came out to see this. And when the implosion happened, you heard a smattering of applause, you heard some crying, and you saw a lot of silence and a lot of tears. There was a lot of emotion when this building went down. There were many people who felt it was necessary for the healing to begin, for this building to go down, but others who felt that this was a shrine, this was a place they had come out to every day. They lost their family members and they wanted to come out every day and be able to pray here, but the building is now gone. With us right now is Priscilla Salyers. Priscilla worked inside the building. She was trapped inside the building when this happened. She was trapped for a matter of hours. At one point, rescuers had to leave her side because there was another bomb threat, and I know at that point you felt pretty hopeless, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
How long were you inside there for?
I was inside for 4 hours. I fell from the 5th floor down to about 4 feet below the 1st.
What kind of injuries did you suffer, Priscilla?
I had broken ribs, a punctured lung. I had stitches in my ankle. I had bruises and scrapes.
How are you feeling right now?
I feel wonderful. I'm healing very quickly.
I know, though, that you suffered emotional injuries, too. How is that?
The emotional I've been blocking, concentrating on my physical. I had to come down here today to say goodbye to my friends and my coworkers.
Your friends and coworkers who died in your office inside the building, correct? Yes. When you saw the building implode, go down in that quick amount of time, and that loud noise, it was tremendously loud. Our ears are still ringing here.
Yes.
What was going through your mind?
I relived it. That was the way it sounded that morning. I lost it. It was like it happened all over again, and seeing the building fall, it became a reality because I still can't picture that my floor just fell, and when I saw that, I relived it.
I mean, that's the amazing psychological factor here, that we all knew this building was going to go down, we knew it was going to be loud, and yet you were still surprised, shocked, and emotional about it.
It brought it all back to me. It was very hard.
Priscilla, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're feeling so well. We met a couple of weeks ago, and you didn't look so great physically then. You look wonderful physically.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Priscilla. There's a lot of work still to be done at this site. There are the bodies of 2 victims remaining, and possibly a third. They will start looking for those victims immediately. But right now, they can start rebuilding downtown Oklahoma City. As far as the site where this building was, the likely plan is to build a memorial park. This is Gary Tuckman, CNN Live in Oklahoma City.
Thank you, Gary. Phone records indicate bombing suspect Timothy McVeigh called a white supremacist organization 2 days before the Oklahoma City bombing. Investigators do not know what was said during the call McVeigh allegedly placed to the group's compound in eastern Oklahoma. Now, the leader of the white supremacist group says that he has not spoken with McVeigh or had any contact with him. And authorities are expected to release James Nichols today to the custody of a friend. Nichols is accused of detonating explosives on his Michigan farm. He's a brother of Oklahoma City bombing suspect Terry Nichols, but a judge in Detroit said yesterday that there's no evidence linking James Nichols to the explosion.
Well, in the O.J. Simpson trial, another day, another dollar. How about millions of dollars? We now have an idea how much this trial is costing Los Angeles County taxpayers. CNN's Greg Lamont joins us now from Los Angeles with the latest. Greg?
Well, Brian, new witness, same topic. Prosecutors plan to delve deeper into DNA evidence as state criminalist Renee Montgomery takes the stand. The defense is expected to challenge a new DNA test when cross-examining Montgomery. And defense attorneys also are expected to stir up the conspiracy theory when cross-examining the next witness, L.A. police criminalist Colin Yamauchi. State Department of Justice scientist Gary Sims yesterday rejected the defense's lab contamination theory. He said safeguards were in place in his lab. Defense attorney Barry Scheck and prosecutor Rockney Harmon yesterday accused each other of posing false hypotheticals to Sims. Judge Lance Ito listened during the brief hearing, but he made no ruling. On another matter, defense attorney Carl Douglas reported back to the judge on prosecutors' charges the defense may have taken evidence from the crime scene. Douglas said all members of the defense team denied tampering.
Over the weekend, I had occasion to speak personally with both Dr. Michael Baden and Dr. Barbara Wolf. I attempted to speak with Dr. Lee, but he was on travel, though both of them had conversations with Dr. Lee. Doctors Baden and Wolf were present at the Bundy crime scene, Your Honor, on June 24th, and they were allowed into the crime scene on that occasion by Mr. Lewis Brown, who was also present. At that time, they tell me that the crime scene had already been washed down. They tell me that they never visited the crime scene on June the 17th, as may have been suggested. At no time on that occasion, Your Honor, did they touch, handle, or remove any stains related to the rear gate or items 115, 116, or 117.
Judge Lance Ito has two decisions pending. One, the prosecution motion to admit autopsy photos, which the defense says would be inflammatory. And two, the jury's request for a full court day on Fridays and half day on Saturdays. The Simpson trial has already presented Los Angeles County taxpayers with a very hefty bill. The case against Simpson has cost the county nearly $5 million so far. The district attorney's office has spent more than $2.3 million prosecuting Simpson. Just sequestering the jury has cost more than $1 million. State lawmakers are considering legislation to reimburse the county for trial costs. Former Simpson juror Michael Knox, shown here on the left, has a federal judge's green light to publish a book on the trial. The judge issued a preliminary injunction yesterday barring prosecutors from charging Knox under a new state law. That law says people involved in a trial cannot profit from it until 90 days after the trial ends. Knox's publisher, Dove Audio, also released Faye Resnick's book titled Nicole Brown Simpson, The Private Diary of a Life Interrupted. CNN's live coverage of the Simpson trial resumes about 3 hours from now at noon Eastern. Now back to Donna Kelly in Atlanta.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. It's about 8.5 minutes after the hour. A Scottish woman is in stable condition in a London hospital this morning after an unusual operation. Dr. Angus Wallace led the team that carried out the life-saving surgery yesterday on a flight from Hong Kong to London. During the 14-hour flight, Paula Dixon complained of pain in her arms and chest. It was diagnosed as a collapsed lung. Using a coat hanger, adhesive tape, rubber tube, and brandy as a disinfectant, Dr. Wallace and Dr. Tom Wong went to work.
The operation consisted of a small incision, stab incision in the chest here. I then used a pair of scissors to go through the chest wall to create a suitable hole. I then used the catheter with its introducer. Of course, this was not sterile. It was suitably sterilized in top-class brandy. We inserted through the chest wall like that. Once it was through, which I gather she found a bit uncomfortable, we took the introducer out The tube was then inside the chest and was then connected to the water-sealed drain and started bubbling away. And within about 10 or 15 minutes, she was back to being fairly normal.
A London newspaper reports the woman had been involved in a motorcycle accident on her way to the airport.
It's amazing.
Very amazing. Lucky that there was a doctor who could be so creative and talented to save her.
Yeah. Well, still to come on CNN Morning News, new weapons hold the potential to neutralize military opponents without actually killing them. But is that a more...
And South Dakota did not do as well as many of us would have expected.
Well, the state earned a B in economic performance, a C in business vitality, and a D in developmental capacity. According to the Corporation for Enterprise Development, development capacity grades the state's capacity for future growth and recovery from economic problems. Colorado, by the way, was the only state to receive all A's.
Governor Bill Janklow today declared 6 more South Dakota counties as state disaster areas. This brings to 44 the number of counties the governor is asking President Clinton to declare as federal disaster areas because of spring flooding. The 6 new counties today include Bonham, Douglas, Grant, Hutchinson, Lincoln, and Walworth. A federal disaster declaration would make the counties hit with high water eligible for federal disaster relief programs.
Well, Sioux Falls is booming at any rate, and it seems the only thing keeping it from growing even more is the availability of people to work in industry. But that means those people have to have a place to live. And affordable housing is tough to find locally. So today, a group of Sioux Falls business leaders unveiled a long-awaited solution in a partnership. Ted Koppy reports.
The apartment complex you see doesn't look all that unusual, but it is. Not in its design, but in how it was paid for. The River Run Apartments are one of a number of affordable housing complexes in Sioux Falls, made possible thanks to this group, the Sioux Empire Housing Partnership, a group of businesses, financial lenders, government agencies like the South Dakota Housing Development Authority, and developers with one goal: to reduce the mortgage amount on housing facilities and pass those savings on to tenants with qualifying low incomes. So far, the group has pooled $6.3 million to help build apartments like this one. What it boils down to is more multiple family housing for Sioux Falls, which task force leaders admit addresses only immediate affordable housing needs here. Sioux Falls Planning Director Steve Metley refers to the Planning Department's housing forecast for the year 2015.
These young people that are moving into town are going to move up in the income brackets in town, are going to demand more single-family housing. So what we're saying is, you know, as we move along with these kinds of organizations, we'll want to move more toward trying to find ways to assist with single-family housing.
Housing Task Force Chair Doug Hayek says today's announcement is just the first step.
It has never been our objective to concentrate on multifamily housing because I think all of us on the task force, and I know the mayor agrees, that for people who want to have single-family homes, that's the best. That makes the best community.
That, says Hayek, is the next step. But until then, the housing partnership will focus on what they call the better affordable housing, meaning more apartments with outside entrances, on-site playgrounds for children, and more maintenance. Something possible, partnership members say, because of one thing: cooperation. In Sioux Falls, Ted Koppy, News 5.
Long-distance and emergency telephone service throughout much of eastern and central South Dakota was interrupted today after a fiber optic cable was cut west of Salem. The cut cable shut off major phone routing links between Sioux Falls, Mitchell, Pierre, Aberdeen, and Watertown. A backup system from U.S. West Telephone Company was in place but could not handle the volume of calls. Emergency 911 phone service in McCook and Minnehaha counties had to bear the brunt of the overload. Metro Communications in Sioux Falls found itself virtually cut off from many places. The phone mess was a potentially expensive problem for many businesses, and there was a danger of life-threatening situations for emergency calls. 911 dispatchers made do with an alternative 7-digit number this afternoon.
I forgot it was in there. I know. We deal with public safety. We deal with lives and property every day. So it was taken very serious. We called U.S. West right away to find out what happened and how long it was going to take. And then we notified the media so that the public would have a backup number to call if they should call 911 and couldn't get through. We'd hate to see someone's father or wife or something having a heart attack and they call 911 and can't get help.
U.S. West reports tonight that it repaired all of the cut fiber optic cables by 7:45 tonight. Several communities, by the way, were without long-distance service all afternoon.
There will be no retrial of the Black Hills Institute of Geological Research on charges of stealing fossils. That includes the Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton nicknamed Sue from federal land. Also charges of laundering money, concealing evidence, and falsifying customer documents. The federal prosecutor, Karen Schreier, says a retrial would not be using the best use of the government resources. In March, a federal jury in Rapid City found the defendants guilty of only 8 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. Dozens of other charges deadlocked the jury.
In a moment, another security breach at the White House and gunfire.
A fence jumper shot. Next on News 5.
It's the best night's security breach and shooting. The president left for his morning jog through a door he seldom uses, and White House security was tight. It was around 10:45 last night, after Mr. Clinton finished a speech on Capitol Hill, after his motorcade got back to the White House, a half hour after Mr. Clinton walked into the south entrance, that the electronic intrusion alarms went off. Man over the fence. Secret Service agents caught up with 37-year-old Leland William Majeski on the south lawn as he ran toward the mansion. They say one officer fired one shot when he realized Majeski had a gun. The bullet piercing Majeski's arm, then the arm of Secret Service officer Scott Giambattista. All of this taking place just a few steps away from the White House itself. Spokesman Mike McCurry says the First Lady and Chelsea were upstairs, the president at the other end of the building in his office.
The Secret Service did a terrific job last night. He felt in no danger at any time, nor did Mrs. Clinton or Chelsea.
Federal investigators rushed to Majeski's home in suburban Falls Church, Virginia, and took his wife in for questioning. Leland Majeski, seen here in 1976, had reportedly been fired from his job at a pizza restaurant, but had no history of threatening the president.
There is some indication of a mental history. We're just getting into the very beginning of looking at that.
Last September, an unlicensed pilot smashed his plane into the White House. In October, a Colorado man sprayed the mansion with automatic gunfire. And in the wake of the bombing in Oklahoma City, last Saturday, Mr. Clinton ordered Pennsylvania Avenue closed to vehicles in front of the White House. But that can't stop what the Secret Service calls fence jumpers.
Well, if Majeski intended violence, he was not very well prepared. The Secret Service found his gun not loaded. Majeski was charged this afternoon with assault and firearms violations. It was like old times in the O.J. Simpson double murder trial today in Los Angeles. The prosecutor, Marcia Clark, and defense attorney Johnny Cochran were on their feet arguing to the judge on a potentially critical point. As John Gibson reports, the point may allow O.J. Simpson to effectively testify in his own defense without being cross-examined.
Came on a response from LAPD criminalist Colin Yamauchi about why he didn't necessarily expect his test to show O.J. Simpson's blood.
I heard on the news that, well, yeah, he's got an airtight alibi. He's in Chicago. And
the defense says that statement, the airtight alibi reference, opens the door to the defense using Simpson's statement to police. On June 13th, Simpson said things to the police that might hurt him, but overall, he offers explanations that the defense wants the jury to hear and is willing to accept any damage other parts of the statement might cause. The prosecution says Simpson's statement has nothing to do with testimony.
That he's talking about his conclusion drawn from the fact that he heard the defendant was in Chicago. How could that possibly relate to the content of the defendant's statement?
Johnny Cochran was next.
We certainly aren't going to yell at Your Honor and become hysterical. We would,
I object to that characterization, Your Honor. That kind of personal attack is very improper and inappropriate. The court knows that it was simply advocacy. I'm not yelling at anyone. And for Mr. Cochran to make that kind of sexist remark, hysterical, I take great umbrage at it. And I think the court should not countenance that kind of behavior.
I don't. She finished? Yeah, Your Honor. I'm not going to yell at Your Honor. I'm going to try to deal with the facts.
Judge Ito said he thought the witness did open the door to the defense bringing Simpson's statement in, and he will decide tomorrow.
The O.J. Simpson trial over the past year has focused new attention on the continuing problem of domestic abuse. And for domestic abuse victims, many find it difficult to leave an abusive home life and start again from scratch. But tonight, Beth Fuller talks with one of those abuse victims who explained why she and others are afraid of losing federal support.
Last year, nearly 800 women and children stayed in rooms like this one at the Children's Inn in Sioux Falls. One of those victims of domestic violence is this woman who did not want to be identified. We'll call her Mary. She and her 5 children stayed here after leaving her husband last Thanksgiving. They suffered 5 years of family violence. Mary says she was shocked at how hard it was to survive on their own.
What do you do? Where do you go? So then you live in your little car in town with your kids going, I'm here. How did I get here? I'm educated. I'm okay. I've got a job. I'm a good mom. And how does society see that?
Shelter directors for victims of domestic violence say Mary's dilemma is all too common, and leaving the situation is just the first of many difficult steps victims face when trying to rebuild their lives.
You have a woman who is in a battering relationship, and she goes to leave. A lot of the times the isolation is so great that she doesn't have the job training because he wouldn't let her go out and work. Or if she went out and worked, he sabotaged it every time she turned around. He doesn't want to see her further her education. She needs to be home.
Shelter directors met in Sioux Falls today in opposition to the Personal Responsibility Act, now before the United States Senate. The act would make it more difficult for victims of domestic abuse that are in poverty to get aid.
They depend on that safety net regarding food stamps and AFDC in order to escape altogether.
Mary agrees. She says without a network of support, surviving on her own would be impossible. But because of that help, she and her children have another chance. In Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
The senior class at Mitchell High School will have a student-led prayer during graduation this Sunday. 88% of the Mitchell seniors voted for that prayer. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled time and again that administration-led prayers at graduation ceremonies are unconstitutional. But the legal status of a totally student-run prayer is not legally clear.
A group of big-time donors received honors today in Sioux Falls, not for giving money, but for giving blood. The Sioux Falls Regional Blood Bank honored those who gave more than a gallon of blood during 1994, and the 3 people who have now reached the 10-gallon mark. Citibank, the City of Del Rapids, South Dakota State University, City Hall in Sioux Falls, and Sioux Steel Company were recognized also for their blood bank support with bloodmobile drives.
Well, soon the name of a former student at the South Dakota School for the Deaf will be part of the National AIDS Memorial Quilt. This afternoon, students at the School for the Deaf, along with former classmates and family of Leif Eliason, gathered at the school for a display of several sections of the acres-large AIDS quilt. The quilt is comprised of panels, each with the name of a victim of AIDS. Leif Eliason was an artist, and the current School for the Deaf art students designed and made Leif's panel for the national quilt. The panel will be sewn into a section of the quilt.
What I was afraid of when he had AIDS is that once he died, it would tear our family apart. But I think through this, our family has come closer together. And at first, we weren't able to talk about it, but now we're able to talk about it a lot more. And it's comforting to be able to talk to your family about it.
Leif's panel of the AIDS quilt will be among several on display at high schools across the country. The AIDS quilt sections, including Leif's, will be on display for the public locally tomorrow at the School for the Deaf until 3 p.m.
Across the nation, this is Stroke Awareness Month, a time to consider the risk you may have to this sudden problem that can kill, cripple, or severely debilitate a person. A stroke is not rare. It is the 3rd leading cause of death in the U.S. right now, with about 145,000 killed each year. Cammie Melton's health report tonight focuses on how you can prevent strokes.
This woman is being shown how one of her arteries is becoming clogged, putting her at risk for a stroke. Without enough blood getting through to the brain, tissue will die, and it's possible she could too.
How common are strokes?
Very common. It's one of the it's in the top 3 leading causes of death and disability in the country.
But you can lower your risk of having a stroke by reducing the amount of fat, cholesterol, and salt in your diet. Quit smoking, limit the amount of alcohol you take in, and exercise on a regular basis.
16 minutes, okay?
Okay. Bernadette Smith has had both a heart attack and a stroke. Now she's changing her lifestyle in hopes of regaining her health.
Kind of eating the right food, walking when I can, and then coming down here. So I tire out not so easy.
But she says the exercise helps. She, along with many Americans, knows the symptoms of a heart attack, but when she began having slurred speech, she didn't recognize it as a stroke warning sign. Luckily, her daughters did, but there are many other signs you can look for.
Weakness or paralysis. Sometimes a person can have numbness on one side of the body. Sometimes a stroke can cause loss of vision in an eye or trouble seeing to one side or the other.
Those with high blood pressure, cholesterol, and a family history of cardiovascular disease are the most vulnerable. But doctors say the first step to avoiding a stroke is to make a conscious effort to look for those symptoms and know when you're at risk. In Sioux Falls, Cammie Melton, News 5.
I'm betting you didn't have a lot of complaints today about the weather.
Sure didn't. A little bit higher than my expectations, of course, last night, but definitely no problem there. If you have not sent in your weather picture, here's the address, and we are back with tonight's weather pick after this.
Looking for a little action? We've got what you're looking for. Jeep Cherokee with an action-packed 190 horsepower engine, driver's airbag, four-wheel drive, automatic, no-charge air, AM/FM stereo, and more. And if you're looking for an action figure, we've got that too. Now, get a Jeep Cherokee for just over $18,600. Battery included, no assembly required.
See your local Jeep and Eagle dealer for the best in automotive sales, service, and value.
In Aberdeen, it's a budding rock band. In Huron, it's their first batch of cookies. In Yankton, there are 520 people who call it a living. All across the Great Plains, we serve thousands of people in ways that make their lives easier, more rewarding, and more productive. You can call it fun, call it work, call it security, call it breakfast, call it what you will. We call it service. We're here for you. We're Northwestern Public Service Company.
Hi, I'm Tom Cook with Ducks Unlimited. If you're a hunter or just enjoy the outdoors, I want you to be aware of what your Great Plains GMC dealers are doing to help preserve our wildlife environment. Through their generous provision of new GMC trucks to Ducks Unlimited, we've been able to raise over $100,000 to help preserve waterfowl and wetland habitat in South Dakota and western Minnesota. I ask that you keep this in mind when you're in the market for a new truck. Support those that support us, your Great Plains GMC dealers.
Beautiful furniture, all of it on sale, and a gorgeous designer floor lamp, a $99 value, free with any purchase of $199 or more at Inwood Furniture.
Later on The Tonight Show, Jay is partying tonight with Dr. Quinn's Jane Seymour and rock and roll legend Jerry Lee Lewis. Then live from the Cannes Film Festival, Alexandra Wentworth with Dennis Hopper, Marissa Tomei, Will Smith, and Roger Ebert. Plus one of America's silliest kids and Jay in a silly fest. And a Dancing Edo tribute to a Broadway...
Keep it out. Marcia Clark went volcanic when the judge said it appeared to him the door was open for the defense to bring it in.
That was this witness's opinion, Your Honor. What does that have to do with the defendant's statement?
Meanwhile, in testimony today, Simpson's dirty laundry displayed to the jury, his socks with those incriminating splatters of Nicole Simpson's blood. And the prosecution showed the jury pictures of defense experts mishandling those socks, just what the defense has accused the LAPD criminalists of doing.
He's got gloves on, is that correct?
Yes, he does.
Did Dr. Lee ever change gloves during this entire one-hour examination of both of those socks?
I didn't see him change his gloves.
And remember that book that Cato Kalin swore he was not writing? It will be in the bookstores soon. It's different than Cato's testimony under oath. In the book, Cato says O.J. Simpson was extremely angry and upset with Nicole Simpson the day of the murders because Nicole wouldn't let O.J. see daughter Sydney after her dance recital.
So far, the court does not give a reason for dismissing another juror. This leaves only 4 alternates left in the jury pool with possibly months to go in the trial.
Construction has now closed the ramps to and off of Interstate 229 at 10th Street in Sioux Falls. The closing and temporary routing under the 10th Street overpass under construction will likely slow down driving in both directions on 229 even more than before. The South Dakota Department of Transportation asked drivers to observe the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit throughout the area, which will be enforced. Oversized vehicles have to use another route during this phase of the overpass construction. Are we going to eke out one more nice day today?
Boy, I think today we were pushing our luck.
Yeah.
It was about the last straw here. Tomorrow, we got rain on the way, and could be quite a bit. We'll tell you about that after you take a look at the address for Cook's Weather Pick. Back with tonight's after this.
It's the best offer ever on America's best-selling car. Right now, you can get up to $1,500 cash back, buy or lease on any Ford Taurus in stock. $1,500. Sedans, wagons, SHO, even the sporty new Taurus SE. They're all available with up to $1,500 customer cash, which means you can lease a Taurus, sedan, or wagon for just $268 a month for 24 months.
Penitentiary for sexual contact with a child and had a history of mental problems. Joe Kaminsky, the man under arrest for the shooting outside of the 7-Eleven store in Huron, is a respected member of the community. Now, Kaminsky's lawyer says problems between the men came to a head recently and involved an unspecified incident many years ago. The lawyer says King recently started harassing and terrifying the Kaminsky family. Again, according to Kaminsky's attorney, his client was afraid King was about to do something to Kaminsky's wife and children. Kaminsky will face a preliminary hearing in Huron on Tuesday.
The first three-day weekend of the year means hundreds of thousands of cars on the road. All that extra traffic means an increase in traffic hazards and hazards to public parks. Tonight, Cammie Melton has a few tips on how to keep your holiday weekend tragedy-free.
An estimated 30 million Americans are expected to have to travel to get to their Memorial Day destination this weekend, and 80% of them will go by car, making the roads a busy and sometimes dangerous place to be.
There's more accidents because there's more people out on the road, but those can be avoided if people just use a little more caution than they're used to using.
Hartman says he can't remember a Memorial Day weekend that didn't involve a fatal accident, but he hopes maybe this year people will take their time and be a bit safer.
I'd just like to see people slow down a little bit and show a little courtesy for the other drivers, and also wear their seat belts and avoid the drinking and driving through the weekend, and it should be a good one.
The paths will be as wet as the roads you'll be on to get here. If your destination is one of the state parks, a little common sense can make your weekend in the wilderness as safe as a weekend in your own backyard. Starting first by remembering to avoid the damp rocks while you're hiking. They'll be slippery all weekend long. Even though the paths are wet, they're still the best place to walk.
They do need to be aware, though, that we do have poison ivy and stinging nettles out here, so the best way to avoid those kind of plants is probably just to stay right on the trail, and then they're not going to have any trouble with that.
And keeping an eye on your children is a key part to ensuring a safe family weekend, especially around the campfire.
You need to be aware, if you have small children, to always keep in mind that it's a big attraction for the children, so keep an eye on them, keep them in sight, always have a bucket of water and have a shovel, and make sure that when you're done with your campfire that you always have it completely put out.
And as you finish packing, keep in mind that although it may not be the most convenient, bringing things that are not disposable will reduce the amount of garbage in the parks and keep the animals there safer as well. Near Garrettson, Cammie Melton, News 5.
And apparently people are taking safety on the roads more seriously in South Dakota. Last year at this time, there were 52 traffic fatalities reported. So far this year, only 31 in South Dakota.
President Clinton today approved a disaster declaration for 38 South Dakota counties hit by flooding earlier this spring. Governor Janklow recently asked the presidents for disaster declarations for 44 counties, but the paperwork for the latest 6 has not been cleared through the White House yet. The presidential declaration will allow those living in the 38 affected counties to apply for a variety of federal assistance programs. South Dakota Senator Tom Daschle says the declaration took longer than usual because of the budget-cutting fever now in Washington, making it tougher to find money to fund the disaster declaration.
Well, chances are, if you're planning to spend the Memorial Day weekend at one of South Dakota's state parks, the recent flooding won't keep you away. Still, several state parks are closed because of high water. Beth Fuller reports on how that might turn into good news if you don't have a reservation.
Lovely weather we're having.
Palisades State Park and campgrounds are ready for Memorial Day weekend visitors, and that's the case with most state parks and campgrounds. Although weather is creating less than ideal conditions, flooding is only keeping 4 state campgrounds closed this weekend. They are Fisher Grove near Redfield, Lake Cochran near Clear Lake, American Creek Recreation Area near Chamberlain, and North Point near Pickstown. Palisades Park Manager Mark Steck says they're lucky their campsites are on high ground.
This area of the county is really well drained, and so we don't get much standing water. The drainages, they fill up quickly. They may come up a little bit more quickly, but they also go down.
And there's more good news for procrastinators. If you haven't made reservations by now, you'd normally be out of luck. But thanks to the rain, state park phone lines are flooded with cancellations. If you want to reserve a site or cancel your plans, you can call 1-800-710-2267 or CAMP. The couple of inches of rain in the forecast for today and tomorrow will affect flooding somewhat, but it will probably do more to dampen the spirits of campers as they wait for the sun to come out on Sunday. At Palisades Campground, Beth Fuller, News 5.
In a moment, tonight is for celebration.
But then tomorrow, it's a time for gainful employment for some Southeast Technical Institute graduates. Next on News 5.
It's down to the final day.
Golf equipment is being sold.
Hanover Direct, a Pennsylvania company, is the new owner of Ostad's tonight. A spokesman says the new owner will have certain purchasing advantages to Ostad's.
Almost 400 newly trained technical school graduates are ready for the workforce now. The students today received associate degrees, diplomas, or certificates during Southeast Technical Institute's graduation ceremonies in Sioux Falls. 378 grads honored in agribusiness, health sciences, trade and industry, and business areas. South Dakota Attorney General Mark Barnett gave the commencement address. Traditionally, local industry grabs up these graduates training at Southeast quickly. After months of battles, Dr. Henry Foster today won committee approval for confirmation as Surgeon General of the United States. The full U.S. Senate must still vote on the nomination of that controversial obstetrician who admits to performing abortions in the past. But the story's not over, as we see in this report from Steve Handelsman.
A few months ago, President Clinton looked like a loser and Dr. Henry Foster like a goner in this Surgeon General fight, so both savored today's win.
This is a good day for the United States, and I look forward to going on to the next stage and to working right through until we get Dr. Foster confirmed.
I want to thank the President, his administration, congressional members, and my family for supporting me so stoutly during these times.
Earlier, as the Senate committee convened, GOP Chair Nancy Kassebaum said she'd vote no.
Despite his many strengths, I believe that Dr. Foster is the wrong person to step into this badly damaged office at this time.
But all 7 Democrats backed Foster.
He has vision, competence, bedrock values, and the right professional credentials to be the Surgeon General.
And despite the fact it took Foster a few days to reveal the number of abortions he'd performed, 39, 2 Republicans backed him, Jeffords of Vermont and Tennessee heart surgeon Bill Frist.
Not based on politics, but rather on the man, his qualifications, and his ability.
But there's political trouble ahead from GOP Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole, who wants to postpone Foster's confirmation vote. And Dole's presidential rival, GOP Senator Phil Gramm, said today he wants the Surgeon General's job abolished, and failing that, still plans a filibuster against Foster.
Meantime, in the O.J. Simpson double murder trial today, the latest juror to be bounced from the panel says she is not a racist and denies she was writing a book, which she thinks got her kicked off the case. Also today, the judge dealt the defense a major blow, blocking a defense move to bring O.J. Simpson's statement to police into the trial. David Gregory reports.
The court found good cause to replace juror number 12.
Judge Ito gave no explanation for his latest dismissal. The woman who was kicked off led the jury rebellion last month and was accused by ex-juror Jeanette Harris of kicking black panel members. 8 jurors have now been removed, and the latest addition changes the racial makeup of the panel. There are now 8 blacks, 2 whites, and 2 Hispanics.
That's a different issue.
Judge Ito has also decided to keep O.J. Simpson's police statement out of the trial, meaning O.J. would have to take the stand to tell his side of the story.
It's a ruse by the defense to put in a statement that we cannot cross-examine, to let the defendant avoid ever taking the witness stand so that he cannot be cross-examined.
The defense had argued that a reference to Simpson's alibi needs to be fully explained to the jury.
The only way we correct the situation is by having the statement. And certainly, the prosecution is so worried about this, the admission of this statement doesn't mean Mr. Simpson is not going to testify. But it has nothing to do with that.
Were you told by anyone
in testimony, police criminalist Colin Yamauchi is back on the stand being grilled by Barry Scheck about his testing of blood evidence. And the judge is again getting cranky with the crowd.
If I hear another outburst from the audience, I'm clearing the courtroom. There's nothing funny about this.
Ito also took aim at Barry Scheck's questioning, telling him repeatedly to get on with it.
Well, you might not find it on your television tuner, but there is a new station on the air in Sioux Falls. It's KPSC TV, actually a once-in-a-while morning show at Annie Sullivan Elementary School. And as we see in this report from Ted Coppy, the show and the stars of it are a hit.
Every other week at 8 a.m., the hosts, or anchors if you will, of KPSC's morning messages take their seats behind the desk to fill in their peers on what's going on for the day. The anchors, Annie Sullivan Elementary fourth graders. The audience, 565 of their schoolmates. Kayla Alexander, one of the several hosts who share this job, summarizes the show.
We tell what's happening for the school and if kids are taking a field trip or something. And we do the weather.
Not to mention live interviews with special guests like Dr. Jack Keegan, the superintendent of Sioux Falls schools, reports from the field, or from the hallways anyway, and live music. Morning Messages started as a radio show over the school intercom. Then this year, made the transition to closed-circuit TV. It's fairly simple. One camera, one mixer, one switcher, and one director, fourth grade teacher Lori Stevenson, who spends weeks putting morning messages together. Originally, the show ran about 5 minutes. Today, it's 20 from sign-on to sign-off, and interest in this program is still growing. Some might argue the show has a captive audience, but these kids are even starting to attract fans.
Do the kids treat you differently now that you're doing this morning show?
Yeah, sometimes they'll come up to you in the day, weren't you on the show, and things like that.
Everybody knows you when you're on the camera, and then when somebody sees you, they go, hey, I saw you on the morning message this morning.
Rob says someday he'd like to be famous, and at this rate, he probably will. Although from a professional's point of view, Rob and his co-anchors might opt for a more traditional sign-off. In Sioux Falls, Ted Coppy, News 5.
I didn't see anything wrong with that sign-off, Ted. And if you wonder what KPSC means, it's kind peacemakers in a special community.
A statue at the Children's Home Society in Sioux Falls unveiled today pays tribute to the founder of the organization. The CHS showed off its new statue of Elizabeth Sherrod. The statue was a project of daughter of Korshak Julkovsky, the creator of the Crazy Horse Monument, and the grandson of Gutsan Borglum of sculptured Mount Rushmore. The Children's Home Society also dedicated its new Madsen House, a 12-bed residence center for the children in need today. There will be some new faces at the Great Plains Zoo starting tomorrow. A new exhibit is actually an old one, 4 Dall's sheep, a special species native to Alaska, rather. The 4 sheep were born in captivity in Chicago's Brooklyn Field Zoo. They are between 2 and 3 years of age. These sheep replace an exhibit taken down a couple of years ago for pen repairs.
If you plan to spend your Memorial Day weekend or any weekend this summer on the water, there are some new rules in effect you really ought to know about. But as John Austin reports, some wonder whether the new rules are tough enough.
Under current U.S. Coast Guard regulations, every passenger in every boat must be equipped with an available and approved personal flotation device. The requirement was expanded last May 1st to include boats smaller than 16 feet, the ones that need them, the size of craft responsible for 3/4 of fatalities nationwide. But there is nothing in the new federal regs that say life jackets have to be worn. 25 states require that children wear PFDs at all times. South Dakota does not. And Bill Shattuck, South Dakota's Water Safety Program Director, says he hopes the state can pass mandatory PFD legislation for children before a senseless tragedy forces our hand. Shattuck's concern is shared by the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board.
A life jacket does not work unless it's on your child. And obviously, in an emergency situation, the child may or may not have time to locate and put on the life jacket, particularly if the child is thrown from the boat into the water.
Though tempted by warm sun whenever it arrives and calm water, parents tempted to let their kids wander the deck without their life jackets should consider. The last 2 children to die in boating accidents in South Dakota were in canoes during fairly nice weather, not wearing a life jacket. In fact, most fatalities occur when conditions seem ideal for boating. But of the more than 15 fatalities this decade, only 1 involves someone wearing a life jacket. Good reasons for parents to do a little better than the law requires. John Austin, News 5.
Well, Scott Bowden in for Rob Cook tonight. Rob found out what the weather was going to be doing and got out of town, I guess, huh?
Decided to have me do the forecast.
Well, if you're going to do any boating this weekend, you probably don't want to do it on Saturday or Sunday. Moving into Monday, we'll see the nice weather move in, so make your plans then. We'll have all the details next.
Maybe you've always seen yourself in a Jeep Grand Cherokee with a 190 horsepower engine, anti-lock brake.
Union. What the weather was going to be doing and get out of town, I guess, huh?
Decided to have me do the forecast. Well, if you're going to do any boating this weekend, you probably don't want to do it on Saturday or Sunday. Moving into Monday, we'll see the nice weather move in, so make your plans then. We'll have all the details next.
Maybe you've always seen yourself in a Jeep Grand Cherokee with a 190 horsepower engine, anti-lock brake.
Union and Clay counties in the extreme southeast are under a flash flood warning, and once you see the Doppler rainfall estimate, you can see why. So very carefully down there in eastern portion of Yankton County, Doppler radar is indicating about 5.5 inches of rain, and considering some of the reports I've received, 3, 4, 5 inches of rain has been common down there, so we will have flooding concerns, and we still technically do have a tornado watch in effect for tonight too. I'll have all the latest, of course, coming up a little bit later during the weather segment.
All right, Daryl, thanks for that update. Well, federal disaster relief is coming to South Dakota. President Clinton has declared 38 counties in need of major flood assistance, with 4 more counties just waiting on paperwork. But funding will only be for local governments and public facilities affected by this year's flooding. Davidson County officials say they have received an estimated $90,000 in damages. Currently, county roadways require the most attention.
Probably hardest hit was the county roads, the bridges, the culverts, things of that nature. That's the largest area that we're looking at right now.
But some think the federal funding might not be enough.
How much money is involved or anything, the way the rain is coming down now, it appears that we'll probably have more damage than what we originally assessed.
The declaration is expected to pay up to 75% of the accumulated costs.
Flooding to the south in the Mississippi River Valley has been dramatic this weekend. As Aaron Hayes reports, people there are making comparisons to a water level they thought would never be topped.
In some places, it is looking eerily like the flood of '93. Today on the Mississippi, part of a house captured by the river. Many had hoped the rivers would recede, but rain flashed across the Midwest again today. It is distressing. A Memorial Day weekend spent in 100 places on the rivers, frantically slapping up more levees. It has been like this now for 3 weeks. Rivers straining against levees, threatening to break. Flood workers on nervous patrol.
If you run into that levee, I know it's blown out there, but if you run into that levee, you can blow it out again. That's awful dangerous to come down through there.
Many levees have already broken, leaving acres of water settled in for who knows how long. Roads have washed out. Workers rush to repair them, but don't know if it's wasted effort. The water may well go up again. And farmers accustomed to floods in the lowlands are finally pulling out, uncertain when this is going to end.
Who knows when that's going to be? It could be forever.
And what's making many people nervous is that this is just how the endless flood of '93 started. Rivers that refuse to recede and a constant cycle of rain.
The rainfalls we're getting right now will continue to keep the rivers high. So the stage is kind of getting set, similar as it was in '93.
In southern Illinois, on the Illinois River, the water is now close to where it was in 1993.
The people have more or less panicked, and they're all moving out, and they got good reason to.
It is hard to know just how bad this will get, how high, for how long. In the few places where waters have receded, they've started tallying the damage. It is already well over $10 million and climbing. Aaron Hayes, ABC News, St. Louis.
Hopefully there is some relief in store for us. We'll have that detail, of course, coming up in a little bit. In other news, the balanced budget passed in the Senate this week. And Senator Larry Presser says that's a good thing for South Dakota. Presser is back home for the congressional recess, touting the passage of the bill. He says many of the cuts came from reducing the rate of increase in funds for many programs. He says the response from South Dakota voters has been positive.
They feel at last we're getting started. At last we're getting started on this cancer of a deficit that's eventually going to devour us with high interest rates and unstable prices, which will hurt agriculture and hurt senior citizens.
Although during his visit, he'll meet with Agriculture Secretary Dan Glickman and Governor Janklow as they survey parts of the state recently declared as disaster areas.
Memorial Day weekend is getting off to a rough start for Sioux Falls firefighters. Firefighters responded to a blaze at the Deluxe Motel at 1712 West 12th Street at about 4:30 this afternoon. Flames were shooting from the windows and door when firefighters arrived on the scene. They quickly knocked down the blaze and contained the fire, which started in one room of the hotel. No one was inside at the time and no one was hurt. Investigators say the fire was caused by a suitcase sitting too close to a heater.
Firefighters also say a faulty thermostat may be to blame for an early morning fire at Dillinger's Restaurant on North Cliff Avenue. They say it appears the thermometer allowed the grease pit to get too hot. No one was hurt, and the building did not sustain much structural damage, but it did receive heavy smoke damage.
You're watching Eyewitness News Tonight with Scott Cavanaugh and Christine Iverson on KSFY television.
Instead, the church will be shaking with the latest rock bands and foaming with beer.
Terry Miller reports on Minneapolis' great party debate.
We have 16 bands, 30,000 bratwursts, and at least 400 kegs of beer.
Father Michael O'Connell isn't afraid to be a little unorthodox. Even if it means starring in a commercial to advertise a two-day concert and keg party right on the grounds of one of the Twin Cities' oldest churches.
I think it's a great combination. You know, the church stands for value, and in control, sociable drinking is a value.
On July 7th and 8th, it won't be the sounds of church hits here at the Basilica. It'll be the guitar riffs and drum solos of bands like Widespread Panic, the Delilahs, and Johnny Clueless.
Some hot bands, but also that we knew what they were about.
Meaning?
Meaning we're not going to have Madonna.
At least Madonna sounds like she belongs at a church party. At the end of the two-day bash, church leaders hope to be able to put $100,000 toward the expensive repairs made to the Basilica. At one point, the roof was so unstable, they thought the church might have to be closed. So they've gotten creative in a restrained way. Reverend O'Connell had to draw the line in an ad that featured a beer tap above the Basilica dome.
Catholics and other people of Christian faith or any faith have a right to have their faith taken seriously and not be treated irreverently. And I knew that we wanted to have fun with this thing, but we didn't want to cross the line and offend people. But I caution you, don't overdo it. Because we also have one serious announcement.
Carrie Miller, Channel 5, Eyewitness News.
Boy, that's quite a church. I wonder what they do on Sunday morning.
Well, we have Mother Nature's lightning going on outside, of course, right now. And like that lightning come from a whole different place. But we'll have the latest on the flash flood advisories that are posted right after this. I'm not really concerned about this. I'm just waiting for them to drop this, especially for our viewing area at least. Probably no more severe weather tonight, just very heavy rain. Had that first wave exit and then big thunderstorms rumble on through. Unfortunately, this is going to start to spin. It's right underneath the area of low pressure, so this will all wrap around to the same small area in the southeast, including Sioux Falls. Could still pick up another inch of rain locally in spots. Not every one of you will pick up another inch, but locally, I think we very easily could see another inch in spots. Unfortunately, we just do not need it. Doppler radar, again, indicating maybe around 5.5 inches of rain in Yankton County. Some very heavy rain down in the extreme southeast. Rivers are already overflowing down there. So if you're traveling down there, again, don't drive through water. You don't know how deep it is. And this will be with us again for at least another few hours. So be careful out there tonight. We had about 1.25 inches as of about 10 o'clock when I called the Weather Service up. 57 and 53 for the almanac today. Currently, temperatures are in the lower 50s in most areas, 65 in Omaha, but temperatures should remain fairly steady through the rest of the night because of the clouds and the rainfall. So temperatures holding pretty steady. And then tomorrow, we should hopefully get rid of most of the rain tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, and evening. Just plenty of clouds out there. Clouds hopefully will be thin enough that we can sneak temperatures up to the upper 50s tomorrow afternoon. But these 70s are coming for Memorial Day, still looking good. Tomorrow will be an in-between day from the monsoon we had today, and then plenty of sunshine on Monday. So tomorrow we'll just have some clouds. There's that storm, classic, just spinning around, little dry slot, and that's exactly where the very strong and powerful thunderstorms erupted, with a couple of tornado warnings right south of the South Dakota border in Nebraska, also just across the border in Iowa. Tornado warnings posted tonight, and right now there's a tornado warning posted for around Fort Dodge. Very powerful system as it lifts up to the northeast, but in regional radar you can see that counterclockwise motion to the rain, and notice it's all just wrapping around the southeastern corner of the state, so it's going to be with us for a while. So if you're traveling tonight, again, take extra care. This storm's pretty strong. If there's any good news in it, it is starting to gain a little speed and starting to push up to the northeast. So hopefully we can get rid of this thing tomorrow morning and then enjoy a few very nice dry days the way it's looking right now, because the next system affecting California is expected to stay well to the south of us. So there it is. It's in eastern Nebraska around Omaha right now. It will lift up to the northeast. Most of the rain will be taken to the east of us by noon tomorrow. High pressure building up. Won't get rid of the clouds tomorrow. High temperatures will only be in the upper 50s, but good news on Memorial Day. So areas of rain and thunder, heavy at times, of course, tonight. Temperatures holding steady. And then tomorrow, mainly morning precipitation, highs in the upper 50s. But then look at Monday through Thursday is looking very nice right now. Plenty of sunshine with high temperatures where they're supposed to be in the middle 70s. But before we can enjoy that, you just have to get through about the next 12 hours.
Okay, and we have one quick weather-related announcement to pass along. Blooming Valley Lutheran Church in rural Corsica holding services tomorrow morning at 10:30 in the Corsica Community Building. It's so muddy, no one can get to the church. So remember that.
Fortunately, it wasn't too muddy on the track.